The Honorable, the Speaker.
Almighty God, we give thanks to you, the Creator of the universe, and humbly beseech you to direct and prosper the deliberations of the members of this House here assembled for the advancement of your glory and the trust and welfare of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Grant that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be established among us for all generations. Amen. Amen. Namaste.
Oath or affirmation, announcements by the Speaker.
Honorable members, Honorable Camille Robinson-Regis, MP, member for Ruka Maloney, has asked to be excused from today's sitting of the House. The leave which the member seeks is granted.
Senate, petitions, papers.
Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay the following papers. The report of the Auditor General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on the consolidated financial statements of the Trinidad and Tobago Unit Trust Corporation for the year ended December 31st, 2016. 2. The consolidated audited financial statements of the National Gas Company of Trinidad and Tobago Limited for the financial year ended December 31st, 2016. The audited financial statements of the Deposit Insurance Corporation for the year ended September 30th, 2015. I beg to move that paper 1 be referred to the Public Accounts Committee and papers 2 and 3 be referred to the Public Account Enterprises Committee.
Honorable members, the question is that paper 1 be referred to the Public Accounts Committee and papers 2 and 3 be referred to the Public Account Enterprises Committee. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. Could the member with the offending device please leave the chamber? Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay the following paper. The response of the Southwest Regional Health Authority to the third report of the Joint Select Committee on Local Authorities, Service Commissions, and Statutory Authorities, including the THA, on an inquiry into the administration and operations of the Southwest Regional Health Authority in relation to the adequacy of medical staff and equipment at the San Fernando General Hospital.
Reports from committees.
Member for Miaro.
Very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have the honor to present the following report. The first report on the Joint Select Committee on Land and Physical Infrastructure for the first session 2015-2016, 11th Parliament, on the inquiry into land tenure issues in Trinidad and Tobago.
Prime Minister's questions, urgent questions.
The member for Shogunas West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Minister of Planning and Development. In light of the recently published Institute of Marine Affairs report indicating that there was significant pollution of the north and northwest coastline and beaches, could the Minister state the measures the Ministry intends to implement to mitigate the risks to the public and the environment?
Minister of Planning and Development.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As Acting Minister of Planning and Development, I am advised that the Environmental Management Agency, through the Certificate of Environmental Compliance process, regulates negative environmental impacts of activities. Through the water pollution rules, the Ministry of Planning, through the EMA, is able to identify sources of pollutants, and through the permitting process, work with industries to institute measures to treat with effluents. As a consequence, I am certain that the Environmental Management Agency is doing all that is required to deal with this reported pollution.
Member for Shogunas West.
Madam Speaker, supplemental to the Honourable Acting Minister of Planning and Development. In beaches like Maracas, is there any education program conducted either by the Ministry or the EMA in order to warn or prevent persons from going to those beaches because there are significant medical ailments can result because of the E. coli pollution in those beaches?
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as you would be aware, this is an urgent question. We get about 5 minutes to arrange a response. But be that as it may, I will certainly draw the concerns of the Member of Parliament for Shogunas West to the attention of the EMA. Those issues are well put and should be done, and I will ensure that whatever is required to be done in terms of informing the public is done.
Minister of Health. Member for Faizabad.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Minister of Health, in light of a recent newspaper report that the Venezuelan national died because he was denied medical care in the public health sector, could the Minister indicate the government's policy with regard to non-nationals seeking care at public health institutions?
Thank you,
Minister
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, first of all, I want to offer condolences to the family of Mr. Navas. There was an article in the papers which said, "A visitor dies after being turned away from Mount Hope." And this urgent question is asking whether he was denied medical care. The factual basis is anything but that. And let me put the record straight for all concerned. The gentleman was attended to at the adult A&E on May the 11th. He was triaged and treated and sent immediately to a resuscitation room. So he began to receive treatment on presentation to the A&E. Other tests performed were bone marrow testing. He received a CT scan. He was resuscitated and sent to the neurology and hematology for further testing. The story becomes a bit muddled because he was not speaking English, and someone purporting to be his guardian / girlfriend / family friend then encouraged Mr. Navas to discharge himself against medical advice, which he did whilst being a patient of Eric Williams. So he received all the treatment, primary and secondary, according to a non-national as per protocol. His family / friend / guardian encouraged him to leave the country immediately for whatever reasons and took him to Piarco International Airport where he collapsed. He was then sent back to Eric Williams where he subsequently died. I want to put on the public record and to correct the newspaper article that this patient was not denied treatment. He received treatment at the A&E, he received primary care treatment, he received secondary care treatment. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Member for Superior.
So thank you for the clarification. Would you kindly indicate your answer with respect to the second part of the said question?
The policy of the government of Trinidad and Tobago remains constant throughout past administrations. We provide primary and acute secondary care for non-nationals. That's a global practice, and we stick to our WHO conventions. In preparation for this question yesterday, because I knew the question would come, you could Google treatment of cancer patients, non-nationals, UK, treatment of cancer patients, non-nationals, USA, and you will see that those countries do not provide advanced tertiary care for chronic long-stay patients in their territories, only for their nationals if they have insurance. We adhere to international best practice that non-nationals, as opposed to other countries, near and far, can walk into any health institution and avail themselves free of charge for acute primary care and secondary care.
Member for Paitabad.
Thank you, Minister, for that response. Minister, in view of the influx of Venezuelan nationals into the country, do you anticipate that you'll have to make any additional preparations to deal with this? Because, of course, there'll be an increased demand on the health services.
Minister of Health.
Thank you. I think that's an excellent question. I think you and I, Honorable Member, when we are traveling, we always research the countries to which we are going. And these countries will have on their websites what is available free of charge and what is available for payment, and whether you should have insurance or not. I think the message should go out to everyone when they are coming to a different country, as we do when we travel to North America, that you have a responsibility to make sure you are covered, especially for emergency care for situations like this. We continue to provide emergency care for non-nationals, as I have stated, for emergency and acute secondary care.
Member for Couva South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Minister of Energy and Energy of Industries, could the Minister advise the South of the reason or reasons which led to the decision of the National Gas Company to send home 30 workers by the end of May 2017.
Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the NGC initiated a process of notifying 30 surplus contract workers, and I will repeat, 30 surplus contract workers, that their contracts will not be renewed. Never a nice thing to do, I must say. These contract workers are surplus to the manpower requirements. Several relate, if not most, to the aborted Beetham wastewater project, which was terminated. Some are administrative assistants, and others were displaced by offshore workers who were successfully redeployed in 2016. I may add that none of them are permanent employees. However, NGC has followed best practice with this exercise, treating them, the contract workers, as permanently employed under the Industrial Relations Act, by according them severance benefits. No other company in this country has ever done that. NGC will also provide financial counseling and outplacement counseling. This move is imperative to streamlining the company in the face of the still very difficult energy environment.
For Couva South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Is the Minister in a position to advise the South since the 7th of September how many workers have been sent home from the National Gas Company, and how many workers have also been hired at the National Gas Company since the 7th of September 2015?
Minister.
Position to answer that at this point in time, because it really doesn't naturally follow through from this question.
Couva South.
Madam Speaker, given the Minister's position,
in relation to the supplemental. Is he willing to provide the request that I made in writing?
Once you post the question in the appropriate way, I will so do.
South.
To the Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs, could the Minister inform this House of the official invitations he received from stakeholders and attended, which necessitated his presence in Tobago from the 19th of May to the 22nd of May 2017?
Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, first of all, I was not in Tobago from the 19th to the 22nd. I received an invitation from the THA for the Youth Sports Awards, annual awards. We work very closely with the THA, and a number of these athletes' success was based on the assistance from the ministry. I arrived in Tobago on Saturday the 20th at 5 p.m., attended the event. On Sunday, had a meeting with the Assemblyman for Youth and Sport, Mr. Jomo Pitt, and on Monday at noon, I left and was back in my office at the ministry.
Member for Cuba South.
Could the Minister advise this House if he and any of his entourage officially visited the Dwight York Stadium in Tobago?
Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs.
Madam Speaker, I visited the Dwight York Stadium on a previous trip. That wasn't part of my agenda. However, persons from the ministry and the sport company did do a site visit as we plan to do major renovations to that facility.
Member for Point-a-Pear.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 5 to the Minister of National Security. Based on a recent media report that police officers of the Driving Under the Influence Task Force has been disbanded, could the Minister state the reasons for this given the critical work these officers were undertaken to ensure road safety?
Minister of National Security.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have been informed by the Commissioner of Police that the DUI Task Force has not been disbanded.
Member for Point-a-Pear.
Supplemental to the Minister is the Minister stating based on the media report that this is not so?
I believe the Minister answered the question. Member for Princess Town.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, through you to the Honourable Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs. Question number 6. In light of the announcement made by the Minister regarding Trinidad and Tobago hosting the CPL final, would the Minister indicate whether this event and its related budget of $1 million have been approved by Cabinet?
That's not the question that is on the order paper. Could you read the question on the order paper?
In light of the announcement made by the Minister regarding Trinidad and Tobago hosting the CPL final, would the Minister indicate whether this event and its related budget have been approved by Cabinet?
Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I like the member for Princess Town to show on where I made an announcement. I made no such announcement about us hosting any CPL.
Member for Princess Town.
Madam Speaker, the Guardian newspaper 2 days ago, together with CNC3, reported and published that the Minister made the announcement of $1 million to be paid for the CPL final. Is he aware?
I will not allow that. Member for Princess Town.
Madam Speaker, in light of the published reports in the Trinidad Guardian and CNC3 of 2 days ago, could the Honourable Minister indicate why yesterday at a postcard the member for Diego Martin Northeast, Port of Spain North, was totally unaware of any $1 million?
I will not allow that as a question either. Member for Oropouche East.
Thank you very much. To the very distinguished Minister of Sport, given your very serious concerns of value for money, would you indicate to the House whether or not it is the intention of the Ministry and the government to purchase in any way the semi-final and finals of the CPL.
Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs.
Madam Speaker, it is not in front of the Cabinet as yet. We have met with the CPL and we're in discussions on final negotiations. And when we do finalize that, it will go to the Cabinet and the Cabinet will make a decision.
Members, this is the time for urgent questions have now expired.
Prime Minister's questions on notice, questions for oral answer.
Leader of the House.
Madam Speaker, we have 6 questions for oral answer, and today we are in a position to answer all 6.
Member for Oropouche West.
Sir, question number 120 to the Minister of Public Utilities.
Minister of Public Utilities.
Thank you very warmly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, Tobago has been faced with below average rainfall during the first 3 months of the wet season 2016, which began in May 2016. The situation resulted in reduced water availability on the island, and as such, water restrictions were instituted in Tobago as of midnight, Friday, August the 26th, 2016. These restrictions remain firmly in force. The below normal rainfall in Tobago continued in the months of September and October 2016, which further depleted the available water resources. This situation had a serious impact on surface water sources, but also adversely affected the natural recharge of Tobago's groundwater aquifers, which were also found to be below normal. Madam Speaker, it is important to note that since 2015, Tobago has experienced harsh dry seasons with below average rainfall that have prolonged into even the normal wet seasons. This is due to the El Niño climatic phenomenon. Despite the above average rainfall during the period January to March 2017, when compared to the long-term average, April 2017 was very dry, with rainfall being below the long-term average. Further, the Trinidad and Tobago Meteorological Service has also projected that there would be below average rainfall levels in the months of May, June, and July 2017. This situation will result in diminished water availability, particularly in respect of the surface water sources on the island. In order to manage the current water resources of the island, restrictions on water use will be maintained in Tobago, consistent with the provisions of the Water and Sewerage Act, Chapter 54, Fortin, in the laws of Trinidad and Tobago, until further notice. The public is therefore assured that water availability is monitored continuously, and amendments will be made to this order once the situation has improved. And the public is also advised in these circumstances to use every bit of water sensibly with an eye on our long-term future. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Member for Oropouche West.
Speaker, question number 121 to the Minister of Community Development, Culture and Arts.
Minister of Community Development, Culture and the Arts.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In keeping with Goal 4 of Government's National Development Strategy 2016 to 2030, known as Vision 2030, which states that the richness of our diverse culture will serve as a powerful engine to inspire innovation and creativity, and the objective to preserve the cultural heritage of Trinidad and Tobago, the government is committed to preserving all aspects of our culture and heritage and stands willing to assist where necessary to achieve this objective. In this context, the government will give consideration to any reasonable request from the owners and operators of the temple in the sea for assistance. However, it should be noted that the Ciudas Sadhu Temple in the sea is listed by the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago as a place of worship. Accordingly, any request for assistance should be directed to the National Trust in the first instance.
Member for Oropouche East.
Question number 131 to the Minister of Housing and Urban Development.
Minister of Housing and Urban Development.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Trinidad and Tobago Housing Development Corporation, HDC, is a body corporate established by the Trinidad and Tobago Housing Development Corporation Act number 24 of 2005 of the laws of Trinidad and Tobago to, inter alia, do all things necessary and convenient for or in connection with the provision of affordable shelter and associated community facilities for low and middle income persons. As such, the HDC is engaged in the management of all lands and buildings, including housing units held on leased lands and buildings and other property vested in it, belonging to it or under its control. These buildings include 1. Office accommodation to facilitate the operations of the HDC. 2. Rental units, units subject to license to occupy and rent-to-own agreements in each HDC development in accordance with the policy of the HDC. And 3. The Village Plaza commercial facilities in the HDC developments. Sections 16(1), subsections E and F of the Property Tax Act number 18 of 2009 state that at section 16(1), all land in Trinidad and Tobago is liable to taxation under this act, subject to the following exemptions. Subsection E states land of a designated class that is declared by the minister to be exempt wholly or partially from taxation under this act. And subsection F says land belonging to and in occupation of the state or its servants, a statutory authority or state enterprise controlled by the state for public purposes. With respect to the lands used for office accommodation and or to facilitate the operations of the HDC, these lands fall to be exempt under section 16(1) subsection F, as it is controlled by the HDC for public purposes. With respect to the lands used for the provision of rental accommodation, units subject to license to occupy and rent-to-own agreements, as well as those lands used as village plazas, the HDC is prima facie liable to pay property tax. However, the HDC is in the process of making an application to the Minister of Finance for these lands to be land of a designated class declared to be exempt by the Minister in accordance with section 16(1)(e) of the Property Tax Act.
Member for Oropouche.
So, the Minister, are you saying that those persons renting apartments and units from the HDC, it is the intention of the HDC to apply to the Minister for exemption on property tax, while all other citizens and property owners and residents would pay property tax?
Minister.
Madam Speaker, persons, only homeowners, persons, the owners of properties are liable to pay property tax. The renters in the HDC system are not homeowners and are not liable to pay property tax.
Member for Oropouche West, question 122.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 122 to the Attorney General.
Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The question lacks, unfortunately, clarity and gives no indication of what concerns, if any, have been raised in relation to the criminal proceeding rules. Notwithstanding, given that the rules were formulated after extensive consultations with criminal justice stakeholders, namely judicial officers, the Office of the DPP, the Chief Parliamentary Counsel, the Law Association of Trinidad and Tobago, the Criminal Bar, the Legal Aid and Advisory Authority, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and the Trinidad and Tobago Prison Service, and that the rules were subject to deliberations by the Criminal Justice Committee, which includes ministerial representatives from the Office of the AG and Ministry of National Security, and that the rules were subject of various sensitization programs and campaigns, which included training for key stakeholders and public awareness drives through both electronic and print media. There is no need for any further intervention by the AG as it relates to the criminal procedure rules. The rules were signed off by the Rules Committee, which included the AG, on April 6, 2016, and were published by Legal Notice number 55 on April 21, 2016. The rules were to commence on the 2nd of January 2017, but were delayed to allow for the improved readiness by key stakeholders. The rules were therefore in the public domain and subject to the scrutiny of criminal attorneys for almost 1 year before it became effective on April 18, 2017. The Law Association and Judiciary are to be commended for the very proactive steps taken prior to the commencement of the rules to facilitate its successful implementation. On March 29, 2017, the Law Association extended an invitation to the legal profession to attend preliminary sessions and seminars on the rules in San Fernando on April 6th and in Port of Spain on April 7th, with Tobago already having the benefit of such training in January 2017. The Law Association also undertook to provide further training to practitioners on the rules at the end of June and early July 2017. These training sessions were well attended and covered topics which included thinking and processes behind the creation of the rules, the need for the rules, whether the rules will assist in speeding up criminal trials, the provision of the rules, dealings with non-compliance and sanctions, and special issues to be addressed, including what practitioners need to do to be prepared for the rules. Further, to these sessions, the Law Association provided training material to legal practitioners on April 18, 2017, via web link to useful information, including decided cases and readings, which information was utilized by the judiciary in the training of judges and magistrates on the rules. The judiciary similarly engaged in public information campaigns to create awareness of the rules, in addition to the hosting of training sessions for key stakeholders. A 10-minute documentary was produced which depicts the purported operation of the rules.
Attorney General, your speaking time.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Oropouche West.
Tell to the AG. Honorable AG, do you think that these rules will really expedite matters through the courts?
Absolutely. Yes, and let me say why. When we see the civil proceedings rules, which were due to come into 1999, they were delayed on account of cries by the profession until 2005. But when implemented, just as this rule will be implemented, these rules, the civil proceedings rules brought the backlog of cases down from 17 years in arrears down to 1 or 2 years. The criminal proceedings rules coming in 2017 now is very much like the civil proceedings rules. And they constitute a landmark decision of operational improvement by the government together with the judiciary and the bar bench associations. And I'm absolutely convinced, just as the pre-PACE reforms resulted in the improvements in the English criminal justice system, that we will be reaping the benefit in our system as well.
Member for Superior.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honorable Attorney General, thank you for the long explanation, but would you kindly answer the question, which is whether you're willing to intervene to provide solutions?
Asked and answered. Thank you.
Member for Oropouche.
Thank you very much. Question number 132 to the Minister of National Security.
Minister of National Security.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, unlike the previous government who made a statement without putting in place a policy, this government has in fact to date paid the sum of $5 million to beneficiaries of members of the protective services who were killed in the line of duty.
Member for Oropouche.
Could the Minister indicate the names of these beneficiaries?
Madam Speaker, the beneficiaries had in fact indicated, and you will see that you'll notice, member for Oropouche East, that you will not have seen any pictures of anyone in the papers. They have indicated that they do not want their names, etc., to be publicized, for obvious reasons, Madam Speaker, because of the sum that they have inherited. I think we can respect that.
Member for Oropouche East.
How we know that is true? Question number 133 to the Minister of Finance.
Minister of Finance.
How we know what he says is true?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Evaluation Division is currently staffed with a number of technical, professional, and administrative personnel. In addition, the recruitment and selection process for an additional 248 contract officers has been completed, and the hiring process is in its final stages. Given the high volume of property owners visiting the existing valuation offices, arrangements were made for additional security and administrative personnel to assist with the collection of valuation return forms. In some areas, tents, chairs, and water were provided for members of the public waiting in line. An additional collection station was set up at the head office of the Ministry of Finance on the ground floor of the Eric Williams Finance Building in Port of Spain. Property owners were also provided with the option of utilizing a number of drop boxes rather than waiting in lines. Currently, the Ministry of Finance is in the process of outfitting an office located in Barrett area, which was leased for the relocation of the Port of Spain office of the Valuation Division. This arrangement will also facilitate the necessary accommodation required for the increased number of personnel within the Valuation Division. Additionally, alternative accommodation for 5 of the regional offices of the Valuation Division is being finalized.
Member for Point of Peer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Minister of Finance. Is he aware that the Trinidad and Tobago Mortgage Finance, the mortgagees are already being asked to cater for property tax in their mortgages?
I will not allow that as a supplemental question. Member for Point of Peer. Member for Oropouche.
Thank you very much, Minister of Finance. Could the Minister of Finance indicate to the House and the country whether he continue to encourage staff members of the Ministry of Finance to collect documents pursuant to the implementation of the property tax in defiance of the court order?
Minister of Finance.
And matter is sub judice.
Request for leave to move the adjournment of the House on definite matters of urgent public importance.
Member for Caroni Central.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. In accordance with Standing Order 17 of the House of Representatives, I hereby seek your leave to move the adjournment of the House at today's sitting for the purpose of discussing a definite matter of urgent importance, namely the recent closure of the Presal Government Primary School. The matter is definite because it relates explicitly to the closure of the Presal Government Primary School due to persistent sewer and infrastructural problems. The matter is urgent since it negatively impacts on the education and health of both students and teachers. The matter is of public importance because the government is setting a dangerous precedent. According to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, goal number 4, obtaining a quality education is the foundation to improving people's lives and sustainable development. Education is a public good, and steps need to be taken by the government to ensure that the students of the Presal Government Primary School are not deprived of quality education and that it is administered under conditions of reasonable comfort. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, I am not satisfied that this matter qualifies under this standing order. I advise that the member pursue this matter under Standing Order 16. Member for Couva North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I hereby seek leave to move the adjournment of the House today under Standing Order 17 for the purpose of discussing a definite matter of urgent public importance, namely the inability by the government to resolve the tragic and abysmal failure of the sea bridge between Trinidad and Tobago. The matter is definite because it relates to the continuous breakdowns encountered by both the TT Express and the TT Spirit and the resultant disruption to Trinidad and Tobago's sea bridge, which is on the verge of an unmitigated collapse. The matter is urgent because of the government's failure to act immediately to resolutely attend to these interruptions, which has had a deleterious impact on businesses as well as the social and economic standing of the people of Tobago. The matter is of public importance because of the emphasis placed on the sea bridge as the primary means of a supply for many basic and vital commodities to Tobago, as well as the ability for persons to freely navigate our twin island nation as a basic constitutional right. Madam Speaker, I so move.
Honorable members, I am not satisfied that this matter qualifies under this standing order. I advise that the member pursue this matter under Standing Order 16.
Statements by ministers, personal explanations, introduction of bills, motions relating to the business or sittings of the House and moved by a minister, public business, private members' business, motions.
Member for Naparima.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move the following motion standing in my name. Be it resolved that this House take note and express its horror at the exponential growth in the crime rate manifested by historic murder rates, violence against the person and property, and the inexplicable disappearance of citizens. Be it further resolved that this House condemn the Prime Minister and the government for A, failure to address the rising crime epidemic, and B, inability to present a credible anti-crime plan aimed at preventing, detecting, prosecuting, and rehabilitating the criminal elements. Madam Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, before I begin, I would like to extend, and on behalf of all of us on this side, to extend best wishes to the MP for Laventille East Mova, who was a recent victim of a robbery. We wish him well and express the hope that the burglars will be speedily brought to justice. It indeed shows that no one in this country is immune from this scourge of crime. Mr. Deputy Speaker, never before in the history of our country has our citizenry been exposed to and are concerned with and have immense fears about the safety and security of their well-being and their property. In fact, as a Calypsonian, a brother of a former Minister of National Security sang, we all living in jail. We all spend money with burglar proofs, blink, car search, coward tax businesses have to pay. We are scared to assist persons lest we become the victim of crime. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, as we speak, the murder rate in Trinidad and Tobago at this time has reached 212. I do not know what it would be at the end of my presentation. But when you look at the names of the persons, and I have my staff keeping the names of all the persons who are victims of crime, I see names like the first person, Ryan Winters, age 41. So, Ryan Winters, age 41, shot in Aruka on 1st January. I see Sheldon.
You care, as you have the right that you can call the names accordingly, but you care to do it. You comfortable with calling out the names and the dates and everything. All right, proceed.
Yes, these are in the newspapers. This is public information. In fact, I could tell you where I got it.
Okay, no problem.
Delina John, 33, chopped in Piparo in the Express and the Guardian of the 6th January. We have, it's all through Trinidad and Tobago in San Fernando. We have Miss Anthony Jim Hamilton in the 16 January in the Newsday and 16 January in the Express. We have Leander Anthony shot in Guapo. It's all over Trinidad. Each of these persons, each of the names I call, is a father, a son of somebody, a brother, a sister, a neighbor, a friend, a family, a schoolmate, or a citizen of this country. Mr. Deputy Speaker, In the 212 names, we have Lyndon Collins shot in Maruga on January 29th. And the list goes on and on. 212 of our hardworking citizens, people who give in the social contract, who gives in a contract relationship with the state, expecting the state to guarantee their safety and security. But it is not all throughout Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Even in the constituency of Point Fortin, the constituency of the Minister of National Security, we have Ricky Mohammed, shot 17 January. Leander Anthony, shot 17th. Richard Ajun, Socorro Serrano, Len Fortune, 22nd May, as recently as 22nd May. If the minister cannot provide security for Point Fortin, then how are the rest of the population, the constituency of Naparima, to feel secure and safe and of the view that he can provide security and safety? Mr. Deputy Speaker, we have, when we look at the facts on the number of murders in Trinidad and Tobago, there is a direct relationship between the PNM being in government and the increase in murders. It cannot be by accident. In 1995, there were 122 murders. That was the last year of a PNM government. In 1996, when the UNC came into power, guess what? It dropped to 107. Cannot be by accident. In 2001, when the UNC left, the murder rate, the annual murder rate was 151. So the last time we were in power, the murder rate was 151. But when the PNM came into power in 2002, it jumped to 172. Not by accident. You can almost estimate and know and wait for the murder rate to increase once the PNM comes into governance. When the PNM demitted office in 2008, the murder rate was 550. In 2009, the last year, it was 508. We came into power in 2010, and guess what? True to form, the murder rate dropped to 473. Every time the PNM comes in power, the murder rate increases. In 2015, the murder rate was 420. Guess what? Following the facts, the PNM came into power in 2015, 2016, and in 2016, the murder rate was 463 murders. Something about the PNM governance and leads to increased murders in Trinidad and Tobago. And I would recommend that sociologists at the University of the West Indies do the necessary empirical studies to determine what is the cause of this relationship. But I could proffer, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I could proffer a solution. They do not know what they are doing. For example, in May 15, 2016, our Prime Minister said, and I quote, "Crime has reached a highly unacceptable level in Trinidad and Tobago, but government cannot simply flick a switch and turn it off," Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley said. So he is saying it has reached an unacceptable level. But we have our Minister of National Security, and this is an article by Kevin Feldman in The Guardian, dated August 2016, the same year. The Minister of National is saying, and I quote, "While boasting the crime rate is lower than 2014, National Security Minister Edmund Dillon said yesterday he was concerned about the TT's murder rate." So he is saying in 2014, sir, the member is saying in 2016 that the murder rate would be less than in 2014, and I've just given the facts that the murder rate was in fact higher in 2016, in fact significantly higher than it was in 2014. But we have another example in Carnival. We have another example in Carnival, where the Minister of National Security, the Minister of, and I'm reading from the Trinidad Express, and it says, the Minister of National Security, Major General retired the Honorable Edmund Dillon, wishes to thank members of the Defense and Protective Services for their efforts in making Carnival 2017 crime-free. He's thanking them for making it crime-free. While higher up in the report, it says, among the violent crimes during the same Carnival were assault of police officers during the Juve in Tobago and on Monday afternoon in La Brea. And in addition, there was a mother and daughter were also found knifed to death at their home in Superior on Monday. So he's saying on the one hand, thanking officers, and subsequently thanking officers, but that was inconsistent with the reality of crime for the Carnival. Mr. Deputy Speaker, statistics all over show that we are inundated with crime at every level of the society, in every category. And I'm looking for the U.S. Embassy, this is January 2017 crime statistics. And they're giving statistics, January statistics, and they report to the United States. And they took this from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. And they were saying there were serious crimes. There were 872 serious crimes recorded during the month of January 2017, for which the Northern Division accounted for the highest number of serious crimes among divisions, 173. And they say this total serious crime figure represents a 19.3% increase from serious crimes posted in the previous month of December 2016. So for serious crime, we are seeing a 19.3% increase. And they said the detection rate for serious crime reported in January is 21.3%. But let's look at woundings and shootings. There were 44 woundings and shootings reported in the month of January 2017, an increase, Mr. Deputy Speaker, of 69.2% from the previous month of December 2016. So we look also at rapes, incest, and other sexual offenses. And this is what the United States is sending to the State Department in the United States about my country, Trinidad and Tobago. Rapes, incest, and other sexual offenses. There were 46 reports recorded in this category for the year 2017 so far. This represents a 119% increase over the 21 reports recorded for the previous month of December 2016. Kidnapping, 13 reports of kidnapping in January 2017, representing a 225 increase from last year, January's figure of 4. A 225% increase. Burglaries and break-ins, and the member for Laventil-East Mouvement just experienced something in a matter of days. They said in burglaries and break-ins, 178 reports of this offense in January 2017, 23.6% more than the previous month of December 2016, and it goes on and on. A litany of increases in crimes. Larceny of motor vehicles, a 31% increase. Narcotics offenses, a 47.6% increase. They cannot deny the incontrovertible facts that crime is expanding exponentially under this government. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the crime that is so pervasive that we feel, it led one of the writers in the Trinidad Express, Michael Harris, I think we all know him, and who clearly is not a UNC, as I'm reminded. He is saying that crime has an insidious damage to our society. And he says, He was talking about a particular situation in Golconda where some people came to a home and they said to the residents, we need water for the car, it's overheated. The residents, out of the goodness of their heart, decided to open their house to assist the gentleman, and they were robbed. And he is saying the sheer routineness of this crime and the fact that no one died could lead us to ignore the dread implications of this story. The fact that such crimes serve to render foolish and dangerous the best instincts of human society. Fear of crime is increasingly reducing us to atomistic ciphers. And he goes on to talk that Trinidad and Tobago is slowly becoming a failed state. So I did some research on failed states. What are the characteristics of a failed state? So I went to and this is one of the authorities, Professor Robert Rothberg, and he is from the Wilson Center in the United States. And he's talking about the characteristics of a failed state, and I quote, "Nation states fail because they are convulsed by internal violence and can no longer deliver positive goods to their inhabitants." He went on to define what he meant by public good. And he said there is a hierarchy of public/political goods. None is as critical as the supply of security, especially human security. Individuals alone, almost exclusively in special or particular circumstances, can attempt to secure themselves. But he says at some point, you need the state to intervene to provide you with a level of security. The delivery of a range of other desirable political goods becomes possible when a reasonable measure of security has been sustained. He went on to talk about weak states, and he says weak states typically harbor ethnic, religious, linguistic, or other intercommunal tensions that have not yet thoroughly become overtly violent. But this is the important point. Urban crime rates tend to be higher and increasing. And we saw that in respect of the data that we got from the US Embassy. In weak states, the ability to provide adequate measures of other political goods is diminished or diminishing. When we look at the other characteristics of weak states, he says, as an indicator of failure, but not a cause of failure, are declining real national and per capita levels of annual GDP. I'll provide data later on to show that the Economist has said, and I said it before in Parliament, the Economist has said that Trinidad and Tobago is among the 10 most shrinking economies out of 212 communities in the world, countries in the world. We are among the 10 most shrinking economies, an indictment on the performance of the Ministry of Finance, and an indicator that crime is impacting on the economy, and we are heading to a failed state status. It says a state also fails when it loses its legitimacy, when it forfeits the mandate of heaven, cannot control its borders, etc. Failed state. And I went to another bit of research on 10 reasons countries fall apart, where the center cannot hold, and things are falling apart under the PNM. And it says, yes, most countries that fall apart, however, do not do so with a bang. They do so with a whimper. It happens slowly, insidiously. And we wake up one day and we realize that we are living in a failed state. Whatever they may say, and they're very good at talking to us in Trinidad and lecturing us, but they cannot do so to the first world. There is an analysis, the countries with the highest crime rates, the Gazette Review, and it lists the top 10 countries in the world with the highest crime rate. And they got their data from the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime Statistics. 2, from National Crime Index reports, from reports on national corruption, and 4, reports of non-government or paramilitary actions. Here, and this 2017 data. Here are the countries we are aligning with. We are in company with globally. Kenya, number 10, high crime rate country, Kenya. Number 9, Brazil. 8, high crime rate country, El Salvador. And I quote, if one were to take the philosophy and poverty of Mad Max and set it in Central America, El Salvador would be the result. El Salvador is 8. But who is 7? Trinidad and Tobago. What? Trinidad and Tobago, high crime rate country. This is what the world is reading about us. And they have a picture of our police vehicles in front of a place, I gather. It is somewhere in one of the projects in Laventille West. We are in company with countries like Nigeria and Venezuela and Honduras, Madam Speaker. We're in the top 10. But you see, they could fool us here and fool the country. But the UK government is issuing advisories to its citizenry. And I quote 25th May. This is current as of 25th May 2017. Right. When is that? Yesterday? Yesterday. It says there are high levels of crime in Trinidad, including murder, especially in parts of the capital of Port-au-Spain. A British national was murdered after being robbed at gunpoint in Montdor, the Montdor area of Mount Hope in Trinidad on the 10th April 2016. Robbery and other crimes targeting tourists have also occurred elsewhere in Trinidad and Tobago. So we are talking about a tourist trust. And we go roaming in the Bahamas. But countries are telling their citizens, do not visit Trinidad and Tobago. We just read the UK. What is Canada saying? Canada is saying, exercise a high degree of caution, telling their citizens violent robberies, assaults, and rape occur frequently. Cruise ship passengers should take particular care when walking around the docks in Port of Spain. Gangs and drug-related violence are the sources of the Canadian government, the government of Canada, an advisory. And it's dated 25th May 2017. It says crimes of opportunity such as petty theft tend to increase during the annual carnival in February or March and during the Christmas holidays. Remain highly vigilant in Naparima. In Laventille, and our popular tourist sites such as Fort George, Labre Pitch Lake, and Las Cuevas Beach, where crimes targeting foreigners are reported. So the UK is telling their citizens, Canada is telling its citizens, we have a US travel advisory. The whole world knows. We cannot deny it. We cannot make up statistics and make up data. The U.S. Travel Advisory warns of visiting areas in and around Port of Spain. Violent, and I quote, violent crime remains high on both islands and affects local and expatriate communities as well as tourists. You should exercise caution and good judgment. Be particularly cautious when traveling after dark from Trinidad's Piaco Airport, as incidents have been reported in the past involving armed robbers trailing arriving passengers from the airport and accosting them in remote areas of the airport parking lot, on the highway leading from the airport to downtown Port-au-Spain, and outside the gates of residents. It goes on and on. Trinidad and Tobago 2016 Crime and Safety Report. And it says, crime is a principal threat to visitors. They know it. They know it. We cannot hide it. I wonder what kind of tourism thrust we could be having if the whole world and the places where we get tourists, they're telling their people, in effect, don't visit Trinidad and Tobago. I'm reading from this report, the 2016 crime report. It's saying crime is the principal threat to visitors. threat to visitors, and most crimes of opportunity. American citizens. This is a Overseas Security Advisory Council, right? 2016, Trinidad and Tobago Crime and Safety Report. You read this and you almost cry that this is my country that is being described in such a way, where they're telling people crime, banditry, burglary, watch out for everybody. But we know this. MPs getting robbed. MPs on our side. I understand Couva North and Caroni Central. Victims of crime. We are in a failed state situation. And there is a direct relationship between increased crime and a shrinking economy. When my political leader was prime minister, we had the largest per capita foreign direct investment in Trinidad and Tobago. And today it is almost zero, except those things that we negotiated and left, like Mitsubishi. And this is the economists. 10 most shrinking economies. I said it before. Libya, that's who we keep in company with. Venezuela, Equatorial Guinea, Syria. We link with Syria in terms of globally shrinking economies. Timor-Leste, Burundi. Greece higher than us. Greece, which is a failure in terms of economic development in the EU, is higher than Trinidad and Tobago in terms of shrinking economies. Man, I talked about the CIA, where they rank us. Haiti does better than us. Grenada does better than us. And to the Minister of Sports, he talks about how great things are in Trinidad and Tobago. Grenada, with about 1/8 of our population, got at the Olympics a silver medal, and we get bronze. We are celebrating bronze. That is what Trinidad and Tobago. Jamaica, they have gold going out of style. Under this PNM, we are happy when we get a bronze medal.
Silence.
But it is not, it's getting worse than that. Mr. Deputy Speaker, when it comes to terrorism, the whole world washing them out on Trinidad and Tobago. Let me say mouth. Speak with elegance. Mouth. Yes. It was our Prime Minister, then leader of the opposition, who, when the leader, then Prime Minister, Kamla Prasad Bisesa, co-sponsored the UN Security Council resolution on the fight against terrorism, saying it was best for Trinidad and Tobago to have passed up, which was good for us to join with the world community in dealing with global terrorism. Hear what the member for Digo Martin West said. At a time when Trinidad and Tobago cannot afford to declare war on terrorists, at a time when you can stay away. This is 2014. He is telling us we should not get involved in the battle against global terrorism. And he said it to constituents last evening at the PNM's Movement St. Anne's East Constituency Annual Conference at Sawa North Secondary School in Bugmalatras on a range of issues. So he's telling in 2014, don't get involved in global terrorism. It's ostrich-like in the fight against global terrorism. Our Minister of National Security, I have respect for you, but I have to give the facts. He says this is our Minister of National Security, was quoted yesterday as saying ISIS poses no threat to Trinidad and Tobago.
Your source.
This is the Trinidad Guardian, Business Guardian, November 2016. 89, published on November 16, published on November 16, 2015. And he is saying, this is the Minister of National Security, the Minister of National Security, was quoted yesterday as saying ISIS poses no threat to Trinidad and Tobago right now. But you see, facts are stubborn things. Facts are stubborn things. I recall sending out a media release on April the 3rd, 2016. And we could check this, yes, from the wheel. We sent it out. You cannot deal with the facts of the wheel. You deal ad hominemly with the person who spun the wheel. But that is a fault of the PNM. And I said, newspaper reports as yet unchallenged indicate that there were 89 Trinidad and Tobago nationals fighting alongside the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. With a population of 1.3 million, this means that the UK, with 64.1 million people, would need to have over 4,400 fighters in Syria to have the same level of involvement as us. But a BBC report dated 24th March identified only 800 people from the United Kingdom who have traveled to support jihadist organizations in Syria and Iraq. And proportionately, and you could jump high and jump low, proportionately, TT has 50 times the number of active fighters on the front line of global terror than the United Kingdom. 50 times. And yet somebody saying, hey, no, let us not get involved in this battle of global terror. That is not our business. But you cannot fool the world. You cannot, the Atlantic, ISIS in the Caribbean.
And you can read from your source, but you cannot display it like how we would like to.
Thank you. And they talk, but I apologize.
Member for Chaguanas West?
Yeah. And there's an ISIS fighter, and his name is Abu Sad al-Trinidadi, recalling how he turned away from Christian faith he was born into, and he went into Islam. And we have so much money being spent on the SSA spy network, and we have people outside of Trinidad and Tobago who know more about, called names, dates, time, event, plane ticket, know more about terrorism in Trinidad. Atlantic, ISIS in the Caribbean. The date is the 2016, the December 8, 2016, ISIS. We have Mail Online, Wednesday, May 24, 2017. Jihadists of the Caribbean, country with the highest rate of ISIS recruits in the Western Hemisphere is Trinidad. I said it, and I sent out the release. I gave the calculation, and I will talk a little bit about the media in Trinidad and Tobago. And I'll be talking that from a position that I studied a master's in mass and journalism. I want to talk about them. They are co-conspirators with the PNM to lull us into a state of complacency so that we have to get information from the United States, Canada.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, Standing Order 48.6 PNM are co-conspirators and preaching improper motives.
Again, member, please move on to your point. And again, when you're making your analogies, be careful.
Be careful.
Proceed.
Madam, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I request that remark be withdrawn and expunged from the record.
What? What did I say? Yes, the PNM.
Members, hold on. What standing order you're quoting from?
48.6, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We wanted expunged.
Expunge what?
Member for Naparima, don't worry, the speaker will decide. Okay, in terms of your remark with regards to the media working in tandem with the PNM, I would like you to reword or rephrase or
Thank you very much.
Demit from saying it.
Thank you very much. I'll be guided. Right. All I want to say is that you have to read the foreign media.
Explain of your documentation. Member for Naparima, have a seat, right?
I understand what's happening.
Okay. The displaying of your documentations, again, you know the importance. You can read from it, but you cannot display it. And then also with regards to your analogies, let's be careful. Proceed, and I will determine your time.
And you'll give me injury time. I thank you very much. I'm very, very grateful. But we get to read about what's happening in Trinidad and Tobago. We have to listen to MSNBC. MSNBC, and we have Malcolm Nance And he is saying a U.S. counterterrorism expert has labeled Trinidad and Tobago as having more terrorists than the 7 predominantly Muslim countries. We have Associated Press. It's the whole world, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the whole world.
1 second. I'm overhearing you. Member, proceed.
Associated Press, Trinidad and Tobago tries to hold fighters to the Islamic State. New York Times, Trinidad trying to staunch Trinidad's flow of young recruits to ISIS.
Also.
Yes,
right?
all right.
The one before you did not quote a date. So source and
all
date.
Right. Associated Press by Richard Nunes, February 16, 2017. The New York Times, February 21, 2017. Goes on and on about terrorism in Trinidad. Trinidad Express, Power People, Caribbean to Caliphate, Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera, and the date is the 24th of the 5th, 2017.
2 days ago.
2 days ago. Talking about a caliphate in the Caribbean. Business Insider, May 18, 2017. The Caribbean state of Trinidad and Tobago is traditionally most famous for its spectacular annual carnival, but it is also getting a name for producing ISIS fighters. And our Attorney General, our distinguished Attorney General, is saying that he's criticizing, this is a Newsday, Shane Superville, Wednesday, 24th May. And he is saying, I also provided evidence to refute the claims of Trinidad and Tobago being the highest contributor of foreign terrorist fighters in the Western Hemisphere. But I provided that data, and I challenge him to do the mathematics and show that we are not the highest per capita contributor. And that is why they didn't cover him. It was Dr. Raymond Ramcharita of The Guardian. And the date that article was published Wednesday, 24th May. And he is saying, the Attorney General, I'm quoting, said Rufus interviewed him at length, but none of it appeared in the documentary. And he is saying, no surprise there, as glibness and prolixity means a proclivity for over-talking without substance. Are poor substitutes for substance. And facts when you are talking to someone smart and well-informed. They could talk to us in Trinidad and lecture us pejoratively with all kind of offuscatory language. But they cannot do it. They cannot do it. And the reason is they have no vision, no plan. I keep saying it. No vision, no plan. How else you explain cutting in the budget the cadets by $3 million, 1.34, 1.28, and 900,000? How you could do this? We should be working to have a cadet force in every secondary school in Trinidad and Tobago. Cut MILAT by $5 million. Civilian Conservation Corps by $23 million to put in a SSA that we could read the foreign media and get all the data we want about terrorists in the country. I learned about Rio Claro Mosque from Al Jazeera, not from Trinidad and Tobago. They talk about development of a prison management policy. They cut it from $1 million to $500,000. Establishment of police youth club facilities, $1.3 million to $800,000. It's almost hard to take a crime plan. When you look at the crime plan, appoint a commissioner of police. Is that a list? That is a list of activity. That is not an output. What could a commissioner of police do if he's appointed tomorrow to reduce the murder rate or improve the crime detection rate? What powers will he have tomorrow if he's appointed? So while that is good and admirable, it has no outputs. They talk about Parliamentary Oversight Committee, establish a standing Joint Select Committee of Parliament on Crime Suppression and Security. Not done. And even the Parliamentary Oversight Committee on National Security is chaired by a member of the executive. Promised to remove, sworn to collective responsibility, and unlawful eviction offense. What is the measurable improvement in crime detection for unlawful eviction? You look at the manifesto and you see nothing. Someone I'm used trained in outputs. What we get is only activity. Only activity. And they always talk about the OPVs. I keep hearing that. I am not an expert in naval architecture and naval equipment. But when I read from the Defense Industry Daily, highly reputable Defense Industry Daily, January 21st, 2013. It talks about the Port of Spain, now the Amazonas class, because Brazil bought them and renamed them. An enlarged offshoot of the River class OPVs built for Britain's Royal Navy. And I want to record this, Trinidad and Tobago's own territorial waters didn't require all of these capabilities. This is the people who we bought the thing from. They're telling us that the OPVs were not customized to our specific needs. But so we have the last moments I will talk about the way forward. I want to talk about modeling behavior. In Trinidad and Tobago, it is being said, if the priest could play Who Is Me, we have that calypso. If the priest could do it, we have. Yes. FCB, 130,000 Agrappa money, 100,000, 700,000 a month for one Alexandria place, 92,000 in Tobago, and etc. 59 in Bahamas, Sante. People are watching on. The young generation are looking on, they're not prepared to tolerate it. And whereas in the past, we would grumble, this generation would shoot. They keep talking about Singapore. I want to tell you about leadership. Lee Kuan Yew in his memoirs, Lee Kuan Yew, and you know I like Singapore, because I want to Trinidad, my country, to have a GDP of $80,000.
Silence.
Hear what he says. High-profile cases, several ministers were guilty of corruption, and in each of the decades from 1960 to 1980s, Tan Kia Gan was Minister of National Development until he was removed by Lee Kuan Yew. Sounds like our leader. You misbehave, you pay the price. I'm not too sure on that side what happens. Tun Boon was Minister of State in the Ministry of Environment in 1975. He was charged, convicted, and sentenced to 4 years and 6 months in jail. There was another person, Phew Yu Kok, and this gentleman lobbied in the party to get off. And what Lee Kuan Yew did, and I quote, I rang up the director of the Corrupt Practices Investigation Bureau and told him to show the gentleman Divan Nair in strict confidence the evidence he had against Phew Yu Kok. Immediately after lunch, after he read the evidence, Divan did not contact me, and he decided to jump bail, and his two shorties lost their 450,000 deposit.
You have 3 minutes, please.
And it goes on. It goes on. He fired about 7 ministers for inaction, and he set an example of leadership. We have, yes, the only answer they give us is to blame Kamala and the peer. That is every time they get up, every fall, right? The car got red, the burglar, who do that? Kamala send them.
Member, even though the member is on your side, I will still like you to address properly, please.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, sir. And I have Mr. Subhash Pandey.
Oh my goodness,
Yes, the Subhash Pandey. And he was saying in Parliament, and I need to get the source. So I will until I get the source, I will not add. But he was saying every time they come, there's to blame the partnership. My other suggestion is smart objectives. For example, they're giving 100 policemen to each municipality. Why not charge each municipality for getting police officers to visit homes in the municipality at least twice per year? Find out the number of police they need and provide them with that. So there will be a connectivity between the police and the community. I recall as a little boy that Baga Lion was a policeman, and he would walk the beat, and he would talk to us, so we knew we could not commit crime. Measurable targets should be set for performance areas like crime detection, 50%. murder rates under 300 per year, give output-related instructions to the police. Why not infiltrate and complete elimination of every terrorist recruiting institution? We born here, we know the people who are being recruited. We know who are at risk. And we should not have the Turkish authorities and foreign media telling us that. Suggestion 2, they talk about total government approach.
We just have 1 minute.
We have 2 more minutes.
2 minutes. Colleagues will break those.
Right. All right. Time is against me. Identification of all at-risk youth. That is not hard to do. And get all the ministries. Get all the ministries to assist.
Your colleagues will give the other
Right.
recommendations. So,
What I want to do, they keep saying, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we are in this together. And I keep saying over and over again that we are willing to help, but you cannot insult us and make pejorative comments and tell us we have cocoa in the sun, and then turn around and tell us we want your support for 3/5 for legislation. I think they need to know how to win friends and influence people. We are willing to help. We are citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. They cannot get away from blaming the People's Partnership for all the ills of crime in Trinidad and Tobago. We demand their plan. I said and I prophesied before the election, they have no plan, nothing at all, no vision, bankrupt of ideas, vacuous of thought, blame game, and talk and talk and talk. And that is why Al Jazeera refused to listen. They could distinguish between old talk and real facts. So I plead with them when they come to talk, let us do this thing together. Come with your points, yes. Come with your points. Come with your points that make sense, and we would be willing to work. I beg to move.
Deputy Speaker, I'd like to second the motion brought by the member of Naparima, and I reserve my right to speak at a later time.
Honourable members, silence, I'm on my legs. Honourable members, the motion being seconded, I shall now propose the question for debate. Be it resolved that this House take note and express its horror at the exponential growth in the crime rate manifested by historic murder rates, violence, members, Naparima, Separia. Honourable members, the motion being seconded, I shall now propose the question for debate. Be it resolved that this House take note and express its horror at the exponential growth in the crime rate manifested by historic murder rates, violence against the person and property, and the explicable disappearance of citizens. Be it further resolved that this House condemn the Prime Minister and the government for A. Failure to address the rising crime epidemic, and B. Inability to present credible anti-crime plan aimed at preventing, detecting, prosecuting, and rehabilitating the criminal elements. I now recognize the member for Point of View. My apologies. I recognize the member for Point Fortin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, let me strongly advocate from the outset that this government, the PNM government, has not failed in addressing the crime epidemic in this country, as has been stated by this member from Naparima. Before going into my presentation, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the member from Naparima mentioned, and other members on this side continue to mention, that when the PNM is in power, crime seems to go up. Mr. Deputy Speaker, you can look at it differently. When the UNC is in opposition, crime seems to go up. One might want to know, what is the nexus between them being opposition and crime going up? I remember, Mr. Deputy Speaker, just around 2010, leading up to the 2015 election, the leader of the opposition, the member for Superior, once said, and she said, if the PP government is not voted into power, the street will be covered in blood, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The street is going to be covered in blood if they were not voted into power. Yes, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It was done at a meeting in San Juan. Mr. Deputy Speaker.
One second. Members, you all know the rules and you all know the standing orders. Once you are quoting, please quote your source, quote the date as you go along. Right?
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I am quoting exactly what I know what was said. At the 20th election, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Members?
And so, Mr. Deputy Speaker, so that when one starts to look at the incidents of crime, one can readily draw a nexus. Because we have to understand that the government that lost the election in 2015 lost on the basis of corruption, lost on the basis of theft. Criminal activities, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that probably continues today, that have the country where it is. But we look in the rearview mirror in a short while. But I want to touch on the issues that was raised by the member for Naparima. And he tends to quote from all different articles on this report and that report. And I know he's a member, he has some international relations experience. And he should know quite well that when you write these articles, you write a perspective from the country who's writing them and not really from the country concerned. Because if we were to write a travel observatory right now to Britain, we'll say don't travel to Britain because of what has happened.
Don't quote from Kamla.
Wonderful. Okay, here it is. Blood and Tears. The article is Sunshine issue, page 10. The Sunshine, page 10. Page 10. During the UNC general election campaign in 2010, Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar made a prediction that blood will flow in the streets of Port of Spain, of Trinidad and Tobago. Blood will flow. Blood will flow. Published by the chairman of the UNC then. Blood will flow. Blood will flow. He was also the Minister of National Security. Blood will flow. Blood will flow. Blood will flow. It happened in 2010. Happened in 2010. You see? Yes. So the member for Naparima again mentions, and he talks about, we're probably looking at a sociologist. I think we want a criminologist, not a sociologist. A criminologist to look and see the behavior of the United National Congress. Again, he went on to talk about the whole question of terrorism and so on. The whole question of terrorism, without an understanding that most of the 89 people he mentioned in the submission left this country during their time in government, 2013, 2014, 2016. Most of them left this country around that time. And listen, I want to see where they got their money from. I'm quoting from the Trinidad Express, dated 24th of May 2014. This was the Minister of National Security at the time, Mr. Gary Griffith, talking about it. Last week in the Sunday Respect reported on the growing force of the Jamaat al-Muslimin in Karapo, under Imam Hassan Ali and his son Raji Ali. Imam Ali acknowledged that his followers comprised criminals and former prisoners who sought refuge in Islam. The Express reported on how the Jamaat was able to set up a base in Karapo by squatting on state lines while being funded through the Ministry of Sports live sport program. Yes. The headline, Griffith, live sport fund financing criminals, former Minister of National Security under Kamala Persad-Bissessar. Yes. Yes. Let me remind you now. Griffith, Minister of National Security. Live sport fund financing criminals. That's right. Yes? You're talking about terrorism? The Express reported how the Jamaat was able to set up a base in Karapo by squatting on state line while being funded through the Ministry of Life Sport program. Yes? The Express, Trinidad Express, dated the 24th of May.
Members, I know each one will have the opportunity to join the debate when the time arrives. Okay, so please, let's listen to the member, and the quorum continue to be, once the member is on this floor, again, total silence. Kindly proceed. The member quoted the source before he went into the reading.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm on the same quotation, I'll continue. Raji Ali, through the Ministry of Life Sport program, is getting 1.5 million a month in profit. In profit. And has ranked in about 18 million in the last year, Mr. Deputy Speaker. National Security Minister Griffith has stated. National Security Minister Griffith, while in government, so, I mean, while in government, Mr. Griffith alleges that the young girl is using ghost names in the program. There are supposed to be 60 participants in one area, and overall, the program operates in 33 areas. A stipend of $1,500 a month is paid to these ghost gangs, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So, Deputy Speaker, I continue in the same article. The Life Sport program is one in which the Jamaat has been funded through government in the past 2 years. 2 years of this has been taking place, Mr. Deputy Speaker, under that administration. Yes? The Life Sport program, which started at $6.6 million in 2012, and I hear this, Mr. Deputy Speaker, $6.6 million in 2012, increased to $29 million in 2013. And by 2014, the program cost $84.4 million. So, Deputy Speaker, funding to $113 million. To $113 million. And then you're asking about why we're not funding the cadet force. And did you fund the cadet force during that period? Did you fund the cadet force in that period? Did you fund the youth program in those periods? Did you fund those programs? Yet you're spending almost $89 million. $89 million. Where did the money go?
Member for point 14. Members. Diego Martin West, Oropouche East, I'm on my legs. Superior. Member for point 14, again, quote your source, and as I said, no displaying of the particular document while you're reading, and proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The Deputy Speaker. And that's the funding, Mr. Deputy Speaker, in terms of supporting for terrorism, people who left here in those areas and those years, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, you know, member for Naparima come and speak to what has happened, what is happening now. But we can't talk about what's happening now unless we take some time, look at the review mirror slightly. As we talk about, we look at the big picture going forward. We have to take a fleeting glance of the past for us to understand where we are at this juncture, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, when we came into power, what we met was a dismantling of...
Member for Oropouche East, kindly go back to your seat, please. Silence. Silence. Hold on, point 14. And members, I know the debate is a very lively one, right? But each member will get its opportunity in order to come forward. So please, kindly proceed now, point 14.
Yeah. Mr. Deputy Speaker, thank you. Mr. Deputy Speaker, what member for Naparima doesn't realize, and he's quoting all the different sources, that live sport that fiasco that treated Trinidad and Tobago has us on the map right now. It's the genesis of where we are in terms of the kind of ratings that we receive right now. That's the genesis in terms of where we are, even with respect to terrorism. But again, as I said, Mr. Deputy Speaker, one can recall in 2010 that the murder rate was 473. That was high at the time. We haven't gotten to that since 2016. 2016 was even lower than that. It was 473 in 2010 when the UNC government came in power. What did we meet in 2015, Mr. Deputy Speaker? Mr. Deputy Speaker, it was alarming. The state of the institutions, the security institutions in Trinidad and Tobago was in a state of, it was dismantled completely, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It was dismantled. There was total destruction. There was no leadership. There was no governance in most of the institutions of national security. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I can quote on there was a radio station, 95.5, on the 28th of March 2017 by former Attorney General Ramesh Maharaj. One day. And he said the importance of the institution in crime fighting, the development of crime scene investigators, for instance, capacity to treat murders and kidnapping, was dealt with by the anti-crime unit. He mentioned the destruction of this very institution created a gap in the ability to fight crime in Trinidad and Tobago. And therefore he was saying that the dismantlement of these institutions have led to the state of affairs in Trinidad and Tobago as we are right now, based on what was done. When one look at the reckless dismantlement of the Special Anti-Crime Unit, and when you put that together, Mr. Deputy Speaker, with in fact the destruction, the sale of the offshore patrol vessels. Again, I'm drawing a nexus, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I'm drawing a nexus between the gap that's created based on the reckless initiatives, the reckless things that were done by the UNC government, because the gap that what they've done before is where we are today is based on the action or the lack of action that was done by the UNC government. We have seen where they have left our borders in such a state that today we are still treating with arms and ammunition that came into this country between 2010 and 2015, so Deputy Speaker. So Deputy Speaker, we have also looked at the lack of governance and leadership that was done through the UNC government at the time. We have done several initiatives, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Several issues that we have done. We have looked at administrative reform. We have looked at operation reform and legislative reform, because this government understands quite well in treating issues of crime and criminality, we have to start with policy, strategy, and then we deal with plan. This government seems to don't understand what a plan is. At one minute they say crime plan, and next minute they say anti-crime plan. I don't think they know the distinction between them. But I see that they're learning. They're learning from this side of the house. And they're now starting to get it right. And so we started, Mr. Deputy Speaker, by looking at administrative reform. And so we started by looking at the Commissioner of Police. This government took the initiative to start the process to renew the selection of Police Commissioner and Deputy Police Commissioner. What has happened since then? The opposition on the other side have stalled the process. And where we are today is based on, again, no support whatsoever to look at the leadership and government of the police service, the agency that is mandated to treat with crime and criminal activities in Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Yet they stay on the other side and tell us that, as member for Naparima, suddenly get some good words from the PNM. Let's do it together. Let's do it together. But that is not talk and talk only. Let's see you do it. Let it be manifested in your actions. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we're not here for old talk. This is a government that is action-oriented, and I'll show you some things that we have done to prove that in a short time, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So, Deputy Speaker, we looked at administrative reform, and so we dealt with the Strategic Services Agency, an agency that when we came into power was totally mismanaged. The last government brought together 3 different agencies in dismantling the Special Anti-Crime Unit. They didn't have a clue what to do. And therefore, we found an agency that was focusless, purposeless, wasn't quite sure what they were about. And in other words, and in fact, they were placed under the office of the Prime Minister. Absence of leadership. Absence. Yeah, to get the helicopter to move from point A to point B, that's the only reason. But there was no leadership, there was no guidance. The agency did not know what to do because they put together 3 different agencies with no leadership and no governance. This government has taken steps to regularize that and now has a legal entity called the Strategic Services Agency, in which we have the National Intelligence Agency, the National Operations Center, and the National Training Academy, Mr. Deputy Speaker, a legitimate body that can treat with issues pertinent to our security in Trinidad and Tobago. So, Deputy Speaker, we have continued to use a strategic approach to national security, and that is using our whole of government approach. We have looked at what other ministries can bring to bear with national security. Whether it is the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs, the Ministry of Public Utilities, Ministry of Social Development, Ministry of Community Development, based on what we consider to be the input from the various ministries, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And so, Mr. Deputy Speaker, again, because we understand that national security, by definition, is about the threat that a nation faces. It's about the government policies and strategies to treat those threats. But more importantly, it's about the people, processes, techniques, and tactics that are used, and institutions that are used to treat those threats. So coming down from that, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the strategy that we have adopted is based on 5 strategic pillars. Understand, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is not about getting to a plan without understanding your policy and strategies. Plan is a subset of your strategies, and this is why this government is so. This government is a strategic thinking government, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Strategic thinking, not one that goes straight into the tactical level, as they are proposed to see. It's policy, strategy, plan. Policy, 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 strategy, then plan. And you that too. Member for Naparima, you are a schooled individual, or I think you are. You know that. And therefore, we have
Silence.
We have given 5 strategic pillars. 5 strategic pillars, Mr. Deputy Speaker, coming out of our policy, coming out of our strategy. And those are prediction, deterrence, detection, prosecution, and rehabilitation, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And these are what will align our strategies of various institutions so that we can look and measure what we are doing with respect to treating with crime and criminal activities in Trinidad and Tobago. So as we strengthen, for instance, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and this government has looked at these pillars and have gone to strengthen these very same pillars that will give us a sense of relief in Trinidad and Tobago. Prediction pillar. We have taken it, this government, to strengthen our prediction pillar, which is in fact our intelligence gathering pillar. So we have looked at that, and we have strengthened the National Intelligence Agency through improvement of their technology, through exposure to training. We have strengthened the Criminal Gang and Intelligence Unit. We have strengthened the Defense Force Intelligence Agency, the Trinidad and Tobago Regiment Intelligence Agency, the Special Branch, to ensure, again, because we understand, we fully understand, in treating with crime and criminal activities, there must be a strong intelligence base, whether within the domestic environment or the international environment. Whether we're treating with criminals, whether we're treating with terrorism, we must have an important and strengthened prediction pillar, which is our intelligence gathering mechanism. And so the government has invested and continues to invest both in manpower and technology with respect to our prediction pillar. Then we look at our deterrence pillar, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Our deterrence pillar speaks to, and first and foremost, presence. Presence by itself is a deterrent, but it's much more than presence, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We have seen that presence manifested in operations, in our occupation, in Sugrim Trace, Lavantil, for instance, by a joint presence of Army and police presence in Sugrim Trace. We have seen the effect of that. To date, we have seen a reduction in criminal activities in and around the presence of the joint police and army in the Sugrim Trace. Mr. Deputy Speaker, that deterrence continues in enterprise. We have seen again the joint effort of the combined effort of the police and the army in the enterprise area. Again, a deterrence, yes, but also an operational commitment to treated issues within those environments. So the model, they are working, Mr. Deputy Speaker. They are working where we've seen the interagency support taking place. Deputy Speaker, our deterrence pillar also involves presence along our roadways and our highways, the increased presence of our vehicles, the increased presence of police vehicles along our highways. We have seen the deterrence pillar in terms of the use of the breathalyzer. We have seen the deterrence presence with respect to the use of our speed guns. So the deterrence pillar, again, is one in which we can measure, one in which we can use to look at the input of the agencies of national security, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So, Deputy Speaker, we continue to see an increased presence on the roadways in terms of stop and searches, in terms of roadblocks. So the deterrent pillar is manifested by the very actions of the law enforcement community in Trinidad and Tobago. So, Deputy Speaker, in terms of our deterrence, our softer approach, again, is looking at how can we deter the young people in a life of crime. And so our efforts continue to support the MILAT program, to support the Civilian Conservation Corps program, to support the Trinidad and Tobago Cadet Force. And let me, unless member for Naparima doesn't read the newspapers, he would have seen quite recently, in fact, last Saturday, at the annual, what you call the Shield Parade of Trinidad and Tobago Cadet Force, there were 26 new schools admitted into the Cadet Force within the last 2 years. 26 new schools. One of them being the first, the ASJA. If you would have noticed that the ASJA actually has a Cadet Force branch right now in Trinidad and Tobago. Yeah? You have seen that. So you would have seen an increase in the amount of schools, because we understand, we fully understand the importance of youth and as a deterrent, get them involved. We have the police youth clubs, we know the fire service youth clubs, the prisons youth club. Again, as a form of deterring youth from a life of crime. So these are initiatives, Mr. Deputy Speaker, combined together to fight in the fight against crime. So, Deputy Speaker, we continue and we look at the detection pillar. When we look at the detection pillar, and I would say detection is not where we want it to be at this juncture. It definitely is not. So we have to improve on that. We have to improve on the rate of detection, both in serious crimes and in murder in particular. And therefore, measures for detection has been looked at through the Commissioner of Police. Right now, he has in fact expanded our crime scene investigators. He's in the process of recruiting additional crime scene investigators, but we also, in terms of technology. And when we look at technology, Mr. Deputy Speaker, with respect to detection, I want to put on the table that this government has in fact moved the process with respect to the whole question of the DNA legislation. Now again, the last government had in fact considered DNA since 2012, but 2012, 2013, 2014, nothing happened. Nothing happened. 2015, nothing happened. Again, a government who talks but doesn't act. And spend plenty of money. What this government has done in the short time that we have come into power, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and permit me, because we're looking at the detection pillar, and therefore the DNA, the procurement, right now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm pleased to say that we have in fact hired a DNA custodian. He has in fact completed his review of the software that is required, and we are in the process of procuring the necessary software to developing the DNA database. We are in fact reviewing offers from various companies abroad, and I can tell you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that the DNA custodian and the DNA data bank will be up and running before the end of this year. This is a promise by this government. This is a promise. And that's, again, along the detection pillar. So you see, Mr. Deputy Speaker, this is a systematic government. You know? We're talking about how we strengthen prediction. We're talking how we strengthen deterrence, how we are strengthening detection. Never before you have heard any government articulate the kind of strategy that we are talking about. This is not a wish-was government, you know. You've seen a systematic approach to treating with, and it's not a one-day thing. It's a systematic approach. The deterrent pillar, the detection pillar, strengthening those pillars is what we're going to get in the long run, to the benefit. And then the next pillar, of course, is our prosecution pillar. Our prosecution. When we look at prosecution, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is based on the amount. If we look at the statistics, will tell us the amount of arrests that we have in terms of the Trinidad Code. I'll give you, just permit me, Mr. Deputy Speaker, just to give you a quick breakdown in terms of the amount of arrests. I'll give you a historical thing. Let's start basically from 2014. I'll give you 2014. In 2014, to give you the sense, 2014, there were a total of 10,986 persons were arrested and charged. In 2015, Mr. Deputy Speaker. 2015, there were 10,942 persons arrested and charged. 2016, 10,679 persons were arrested and charged. To date, in 2017, we have roughly about 4,000 people arrested and charged. So when you look at the amount of persons arrested and charged, how do we strengthen that prosecution pillar? We do it in several ways, Mr. Deputy Speaker, from a government perspective, but also from a police commissioner perspective. Mr. Deputy Speaker, Commissioner of Police have looked at what he has with respect to people who are legally trained with his, and is developing a whole prosecutorial unit within the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. And the government is prepared to support whatever initiative that Commissioner of Police has in terms of strengthening the prosecutorial base with respect to that pillar, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The fifth strategic pillar, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is rehabilitation. Because you see, there's a nexus along the chain in terms of being arrested and being prosecuted. And the next stage would be, in fact, prison. And therefore we must, because again, when you look at the nexus between prison and crime, we are looking at the rehabilitation pillar. And so prison reform is important to us. And we continue to support agencies such like Division and Mission. We continue to support the prisons initiative in terms of restorative justice, rehabilitation, and recovery, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And reform, Mr. Deputy Speaker, so that rehabilitation as along the chain of behaviors is important also when you look at the nexus between that and crime. So we continue to look at those pillars. And as I said before, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we have to look at those initiatives as how do they contribute in the fight against crime and criminal action in Trinidad and Tobago. So again, Mr. Deputy Speaker, strategic pillars: prediction, intelligence; deterrence, presence, and operations; detection, how do we boost detection rate, important in solving crimes, and so on. So we have put, again, invested human and resources towards the pillar. Prosecution and rehabilitation. Those, Mr. Deputy Speaker, are the strategic pillars that we are looking at. And we are sure that once we enforce those pillars, they will redound to the benefit of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Deputy Speaker, again, in terms of initiative, you'll see that this government has looked at almost a two-fold approach, two-sprung approach, which is a legislative approach and an operational approach. We have seen and we have heard from the Attorney General with respect to the legislative framework, and he will talk about that in a short while. He will tell you about the legislative framework. But so we are moving on the same track towards the same goal, legislatively and operationally. Legislatively through the Office of the Attorney General, operationally through the Ministry of National Security and the agencies of national security. And so we continue to launch operations, targeted operations throughout Trinidad and Tobago. I've mentioned already our efforts in Sugar Trace, Laventil, our efforts in Enterprise. But we continue to launch operations throughout the length and breadth of Trinidad and Tobago. And those operations are jointly based Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, supported by Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, supported by the Strategic Services Agency, joint interagency efforts throughout the length and breadth. But additionally, Mr. Deputy Speaker, while we deal with issues in land, we also deal with issues in the maritime security environment. And so the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force through the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard continues to operate in the maritime security environment, continues to provide the kind of security fence that's required in our maritime security, because we are very vulnerable in the maritime security environment. And so, as a responsible government, we continue to use the resources that we have to ensure that we have a presence to deter illegal entry to our shores of guns, ammunition, even the movement of illegal persons. But more importantly, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we have...
Remember, your 30 minutes has expired. You have an additional 15. You care to avail yourself?
Yes, Mr.
Proceed.
Deputy Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, so we continue to look and to apply resources in the maritime security environment. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this government has in fact re-established bilateral cooperation with the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. And this was dormant for some time. If the last government was very conscious and understand the vulnerability in our maritime security environment, they would have done something like that. Instead, what did they do? They left everything open in the Gulf of Paria and around the waters of Trinidad and Tobago. No vessels, no relationship with Venezuela, no bilateral cooperation with Venezuela. We understand, and if the member for Naparima, who is an international relations expert, would realize, if you're dealing with the maritime security environment, you have to establish, you must establish kind of relationship with your neighbor. We are the closest neighbor to Venezuela, 7 miles at its nearest point. We established, as a matter of fact, because it was there before, under PNM government some years ago. Re-established bilateral cooperation with Venezuela, because between us and Venezuela, another 2 miles, there's a midpoint. As I imagine, there's a midpoint between us that we patrolled. And we established that to ensure that there's cooperation and collaboration on both sides of the maritime divide. So that the commander of the Guardia Nacional or the Guardia Costa can talk directly to the commanding officer of the Coast Guard. And they do so. They do so right now as we speak, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So that together we share security concerns because, again, movements of goods and services, illegal and otherwise, between both islands continue. And therefore, by sharing those information, we've established a kind of rapport to help us through the issues in the maritime security environment that was left, to a large extent, vacant and open by the last administration. So, Deputy Speaker, our Coast Guard continues to play a very important part. One could remember, not recently, in fact, the month of February, where we had 2 major seizures were made on the Coast Guard with plant-like substance, well, crocus bag, as a matter of fact, weighing approximately 32 kilograms, the estimated street value, 440,000 US dollars. Again, we had one of the biggest drug busts, Mr. Deputy Speaker, through our presence of Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard in our maritime waters. The largest haul since 1999, a fine of 4.2 tons of cocaine with the estimated street value, $125 million, Mr. Deputy Speaker. 125 US dollars, approximately 837 million Trinidad and Tobago dollars. Nearly $1 billion worth of drugs, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So we continue to do so. Mr. Deputy Speaker, even as recent as yesterday, and it was highlighted on today's papers, even as recent as yesterday, as highlighted on today's papers, the Daily Express of today's date was highlighted. A drug bust. A quantity of drugs laid on the table which was seized from 3 men in a pirogue during a joint police Coast Guard exercise on Wednesday night. Valued at almost $2 million were destroyed, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So they continue. We continue to treat this in the maritime environment, and not only on sea, but also on air, utilizing our air assets or aerial surveillance through the Trinidad and Tobago Air Guard. So we continue, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to bring a certain sense of security and safety to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So, Deputy Speaker. So, Deputy Speaker, we will continue initiatives such as community policing. We have continued that. Again, the Commissioner of Police has included that as part of his deliverables to look at how the police get more into the community. The whole aspect of community policing is there with us, and the Commissioner of Police have taken that initiative. He has intensified the drive to remove illegal guns and ammunition within the streets of Trinidad and Tobago. And we have seen that last year was one of the highest in terms of removing guns and ammunition off the streets of Trinidad and Tobago. We have looked at, to date, Mr. Deputy Speaker, because as we said, guns are the weapons of choice, and therefore there's a considered effort by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to remove firearms and ammunition off the streets of Trinidad and Tobago. When one looks at 2016, the amount of firearms removed were in the vicinity of 334. Ammunition was roughly 4,698. To date in 2017, we have removed 4,935 just to date in terms of ammunition off the streets of Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we continue to increase our seizure of guns and ammunition within Trinidad and Tobago. The drive continues. Mr. Deputy Speaker, another initiative that we have looked at is in terms of strengthening our cold case unit. An initiative again by the Commissioner of Police. Understand that, again, alignment to the strategic pillar. Strengthening the cold case unit, detection pillar. So you see how our strategic imperatives are drilled down to the various agencies. The strengthening of the cold case unit continues. You have built that. You have built the capacity there to look at cases that have been historically left alone. We have updated the police database, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We have established a criminal case management unit within the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. We have done the computerization of Forensic Science Center, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Right now, we in fact finalizing plans to build, to construct a new Forensic Science Center, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And that, again, is an initiative that will take root this year in 2017. So, Deputy Speaker, we have seen a number of initiatives taking place. The government has invested to a large extent on the digital police safety communication system for Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and throughout the agencies of national security. What that has done is, in fact, do away with the old analog system and now moved across the platforms, across the national security agencies, the new digital communication system, so that now there's interoperability between all the agencies of national security. The police can speak to the defense force can speak to immigration, they can speak to strategic service agency across on one platform in terms of communication. The government has invested tremendously in this aspect, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We have seen the introduction of body-worn cameras. Again, use of technology. We have done the pilot project in enterprise, and to date, it has given us some good recommendations going forward. We have looked at the video conferencing facility at the prisons, at the nation prisons, which again would be a game changer. That is about 78% completed. And when that changes, we will remove the whole aspect of moving people from remand yard to various parts of Trinidad and Tobago, changing the way in which we do business as far as our court's concerned. Another achievement, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is in terms of the electronic magnetic bracelets. That device, again, something that has been there for some time. But again, talk and more talk. This government has taken actions with respect to the electronic magnetic bracelet. And that, again, Mr. Deputy Speaker, will come on stream by the end of this year. We have already have the manager and the deputy manager. Yeah? We have the deputy manager. We are in the process of procuring those bracelets. We have engaged the UK, the US, and Canada. We are now engaging our local provider. At the same time, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service would be the response agency of putting the mechanism in place. So, again, it was a talk shop. But this government has taken action, and we'll see again by the end of this year the implementation of the electronic magnetic bracelet, which again would be a game changer in this country, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So, Deputy Speaker, as I close, let me again remind this country that this government has laid out its policy, its strategy, its strategic pillars, which is on a kind of alignment.
Please take that back, Member for Bartara San Juan. Yes. Yes. Thank you. Members, right, it was now drawn to my attention that the member for Digomatin North East is out of his seat, and as a result of what happened earlier. The situation that happened earlier, member for Siparia, the situation that happened earlier is that the member from Oropouche East was coming towards to have a seat there, and he made a remark. And this is why I told him to get back to his seat. Remember, yes, because earlier in the sitting also, the member for Couva North and Couva South were also sitting in a separate seat. Probably you were not aware of it. Not so? Couva North and South, you always sitting at the additional chairs. So members can go to other seats, right? Can go to other seats and spend some time as the case may be, and I was just waiting to see the length of time, right? But there was a different situation that happened with member for Siparia and Oropouche East. Fair enough? Right? Oropouche East. Clarification on what member for Bartara? The remark was not in terms of what was happening at the chamber at the time.
No remark was
okay,
made.
let's leave it there. Let's leave it there. All right, so kindly proceed, member for point 40.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, again, yes, Mr. Deputy Speaker, as I come to my close, let us, okay, Mr. Deputy Speaker, you have seen from my presentation that this government is strategic in thinking and purposeful in the way in which it does business. So you have seen the approaches both in terms of the administrative reform, or operational reform, or legislative reform. And as I said, the AG will talk more about the legislative reform. I've spoken to the administrative reform in the various agencies. I've spoken to the operational reform and most of our initiatives. And what you can see, Mr. Deputy Speaker, if you follow the discussion quite clearly, as opposed to running backward and forward and all over the place like member for Naparima, you'd realize that this was purposefully done, that you can follow the logic between, in terms of where we are going and the initiatives that we are bringing to bear. So that when we talk about a crime plan, and I say again to the member of Naparima, a plan follows policy after strategy. And therefore, when you look at the pillars, you will see the alignment between what we have put out, those 5 strategic pillars, and what the agencies are doing, how they strengthen, how the government reinforce those pillars in terms of budgetary allocations and so on. I want to take this opportunity, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to thank the members of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, supported by the members of Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force and all agencies of national security for the excellent job that they are doing in treating with crime in this country, Mr. Deputy Speaker. They will continue to work assiduously. They continue to work assiduously, and this government is prepared to provide what is required to ensure that they do their job effectively and efficiently, Mr. Deputy Speaker. This government is ensuring that the people of Trinidad and Tobago remain and continues to provide a safe and secure environment. We'll do all that we can, continue to bring the resources of government, resources to support the agencies of national security to ensure the safety and security of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
I recognize the member for Oropouche East.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, thank you for your recognition and the privilege to stand in my seat here and talk from my table. Mr. Deputy Speaker, for us on this side, it is not a pleasure to rise to speak on this motion brought by the very courageous member for Naparima, who had the political will and had the nation at heart and his constituents by tabling a motion that deals with the most critical problem facing the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And I begin by congratulating the author of this motion for his courage, his commitment, and for calling us out at this moment to reflect on the most critical matter facing the country. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is well known that with all the other scandals around us, sometimes we stand between the goalposts and there are 25 balls coming to us from all directions. It could be the property tax. It could be roaming. It could be romping. It could be traveling. It could be anything. But if we reflect, there is no need to pay property tax if you are dead. There is no need to get proper health services if you are murdered. There is no need to get a quality education if you are wounded and permanently disabled. So the fundamental role of a government is really to protect life and limb. And if any government cannot satisfy that singular and primary objective, they ought to vacate office. Not to vacation, they ought to vacate office. And today, this government stands on trial. What have you done in 20 months that a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago today who tune into the radio or the television and listen to this debate can say, tonight, I can unlock my front door. I'm safe. What have you said today? And I felt sorry for the member for Point Fortin, who was asked to respond to this motion. I felt the member for Toko Sande Grande, who had to correct him a few days ago on the state of police preparedness to deal with mental patients. I thought maybe the member for Toko Sande Grande ought to have responded. But the member for Point Fortin has been a successful failure. He's a parliamentary colleague, but a successful failure. Because if you cannot protect citizens 20 months in office, you continue with the same approach. You know, citizens of this country today, It would have been reasonable to look at the television, listen to the radio and say, the Minister of National Security will now speak. We will hear some new policy directives. We will hear new projects, new programs, maybe an announcement of some capital expenditure on programs, projects, policies. What did we hear? The pillars. I want to tell the member for Point Fortin, thank God for the pillars. I don't know what would have happened to this country today if we didn't have these pillars. He announced 5 pillars, but we have 3 murders per day. We have this slaughtering of human beings in our country, robbery, and kidnapping now, and murder. And thank God for these pillars. What would have happened if we didn't have it? And the member for Point Fortin spoke about the member for Siparia. He said in 2010, announced in Sawa, blood will flow if the PNM is in power. But blood flows if the PNM is in power. That's a fact. There's nothing to hide. And announced it was in the Sunshine. The Sunshine was not in operation and being published in 2010. So what could you do that? Fake news. But that is a fact. The member for Point Fortin confirmed that when the PNM is in opposition, we have less crime. They have confirmed that. So I think they belong in opposition, if that's the case. But we heard of these strategic pillars, and there are several points I wanted to raise in reflection of the minister's presentation today. And I want to ask the minister to look at the Trinidad and Tobago police statistics of reported and detected crime 2008-2014. Now, the very police that gave us this, gave you this, you have the same material.
Of your document, you can quote and read accordingly.
As Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'll display myself. The very Trinidad and Tobago Police Service that gave the data on serious crime to us would have given the data on serious crime to you. I have had the opportunity to serve for 5 years plus as a member of the National Security Council. I understand something about that sector. And in these data, the series of data, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is clear, and I just make one statistics, because in this crime debate, there's really a risk that you could over-statisticize. And people may become numb with statistics. You know, crime is a human condition. People can become numb with numbers. And crime is a human condition. In Trinidad and Tobago, we must ask citizens today, do you feel safer today than you felt in September 2015. That's all. If you feel safer, the government, you believe they're doing a good job. But if you are not safer today, then they're doing a poor and horrible job. That's all. But I will just depend on one issue, one instance of statistics. Mr. Deputy Speaker, June 2008 to May 2009, total serious crimes reported. June 2008 to May 2009, 20,291. 20,291. By June 2014 to May 2015, so we go to June 2014 to May 2015, serious crimes reported, 11,831. That is a drop of 48.7%, almost 50%. And this is during the partnership, and I will come to some of the work we did in that sector. And serious crimes, Mr. Deputy Speaker, involve robbery, sexual offenses, murder, wounding and shooting, kidnapping for ransom, kidnappings, burglaries, breaking offenses and so on. That is serious crime. We got it down by 50% between 2008 and 2015. How did we do that? How did we do that? By accident? It was the same police force. Today the minister praising the police, when his leader blaming the police. And they continue today with this blame game. Spent 80% of their time on the UNC. My God, you are in power for 20 months. What have you done? And what is the effect of what you have done? Absolutely nothing. And we got crime with the same police service. You know, there's also, I have heard it myself, we can't test it empirically with empirical evidence. The member for Arima, he's who disturbs me here. The member for Arima says he doesn't want to hear about corruption unless there's empirical evidence. But we could test it. There's a feeling that the police only work when the UNC is in power. There's that feeling. Because when the PNM is in power, they do not have the political will or the political drive to have police officers and other public officers working and delivering. I could develop that another time. But there's a feeling that the police works that way. And today they praise the police, but then blame the police for crime. We have the newspaper evidence, we can bring that, where the Prime Minister began his term by saying we must look at the commanders. We never hear about commander before in real life. Must summon commanders. They're responsible for region. They actually purported to fire senior police officers on the basis that they weren't dealing with crime. And the data show crime went up by 2016. So that they were passing the buck. So you blame police for crime. Huh? Who else you blame? You blame the UNC for health problems. You blame the member for Caronese for education problem. When they rack up a bill of 59,000, they blame the whole of Bahamas for the Roman charges. They blame the whole of Bahamas responsible for that. You blame Rashmi. You know, I was shocked that they haven't blamed Rashmi Ramnarayan yet. I thought she was working at Magdalena. So that's how they got all these figures about $92,000. By this week, Rashmi Ramnarayan will be responsible for the Magdalena figures. By this week. They blame everyone except not taking responsibility for their governance. Everyone. And I asked the member for Point Fortin to cut it out. Cut it out. You have your pillars. Nothing has been delivered yet. You are in the process of delivering everything.
You have 3 of you.
Today, there are 3 ministers in the Ministry of National Security. There are 2 ministers and a parliamentary. It was a parliamentary representative who corrected you the other day on the police. Right. There are 2 ministers and a parliamentary secretary in the Ministry of National Security. The Prime Minister will not reshuffle his cabinet. He can't because really he has the best talent available as it is. There is nothing else there's nothing else to find. He will never reshuffle this cabinet. Whatever happens, he cannot because he has no other talent. It's a pack. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, they have failed. Yes. They have failed. And another critical area, and I want to deal with it quickly, concerns white-collar crime. Do you know, Mr. Deputy Speaker, in every part of the world that they have dealt successfully with crime, they have dealt with white-collar crime? There's no part of the world, you can research it, there's no part of the world that a government has dealt with crime and left white-collar crime unpunished. And what do we see today? What is the conviction? What is the political will? What is the commitment of this government to dealing with white-collar crime? They frighten everybody every week. We're coming after you. We're bringing this suite of legislation, the architecture, the menu. Yeah, the menu. Point Fortin likes menu. So we stick with the menu. They bring the menu, the architecture. The Gomartin Central as well might appreciate a menu. It was 92 and 3 now, we understand. His figures get better. So, yeah, that's better than Sunil Narayan. Mr. Deputy Speaker, what have they done to deal with white-collar crime except trying to frighten everybody? Trying to frighten everybody. Today, we learned from the member for San Fernando East, and I must remind him that unless I ask him a question, you will never hear his voice in this parliament. So, today we learned from him that residents of the HDC rental area will not pay property tax, but every other citizen will pay property tax.
Members, the debate is on crime, and again, let's keep the property tax out of it, please.
Thank you very much. Mr. Deputy Speaker, dealing with white-collar crime is a critical challenge, and they have done nothing in 20 months. They have spent $30.5 million between PricewaterhouseCoopers and Ernst and Young. They have spent $30.5 million trying to find something on the former government to find corruption, to find this 30.5 million, more than $1 million a month, they have found nothing. They have found nothing. And the point I'm making is that if you are dealing with crime, you must have political will. When today, there are persons at the Education Facilities Company Limited, there are persons in the Ministry of Sport, busting the mark, whistleblowers, they are trying to prosecute the messengers and not the perpetrators. They are firing people who they feel are reporting criminal offenses, and they're not going after the perpetrators because of a lack of political will. And to cover up, we have white-collar crime taking place at the highest level in the public service. There are ministers of government that stand accused of wrongdoing. And to cover it up, they are terrorizing public officers, firing persons, terminating their contracts, failing to extend their contracts.
Mr. Deputy Speaker,
and they cannot deal with white-collar crime that way.
48-1.
Deputy Speaker.
Hold on one second. One second. Proceed, member.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So, they blame us. The member for Laventille East Mova, I'm so sorry he was a victim. The member for Laventille West.
The time that that particular aspect is being brought up. Please, in terms of tedious repetition, right, actual reference to that particular incident. So you can move on.
Okay, Mr. Speaker. We'll move on. Mr. Deputy Speaker, when they came in office, and Mr. Deputy Speaker, when they served in government in 2009, look at 2009 and 2017. They were in government 2009, they're in government now. You know, it is part of the parliamentary record. There was a motion on spiraling crime rate, Friday, 30th January 2009. And Mr. Speaker, you will not be surprised to learn that at that time, in dealing with crime, they were playing the blame game. As former member Subhash Pandey had to say, instead of dealing with crime, listen to how they deal with crime. Blame game, blame game, blame game. Do you know what they are saying? In 2009, the UNC is the cause of crime. He's not saying what steps he will take to deal with crime. He's not asking the opposition, come on board. Instead, it is the blame game. This is the DNA of the PNM. 2009. Fast forward to 2017. It is the same thing. We heard it today. OPVs. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the OPVs were defective. There was a prolonged and complex arbitration process in which the government of Trinidad and Tobago won and got back our money. If there was a breach of contract, and we brought the crime down, the member for Point Fortin today, and the SWAT at the height. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to remind this member for Point Fortin that at the height of the operations of the SWAT in 2008, do you know what the murder figure was? 550 murders at the height of the SWAT.
Which was illegal.
They spent on the SWAT $500 million was spent on that. When they spent $500 million, they had 500 murders. It was $1 million per murder by the SWAT. And they're proud of that. The OPVs, the member today boasting the biggest drug haul a few weeks ago, and boasting today, I believe, is 19 million. How did the Coast Guard chase down those perpetrators? With a raft? With a bicycle? With the OPV? With vessels bought by the People's Partnership. It is the vessels from Holland, the Daman vessels that they have been using for the last 6 months in shallow waters to chase down drug runners and seizing record seizure now with drugs. That is what you call fit for purpose. It cannot be any vessel bought by you because you have bought nothing.
MVCU.
You have not bought a raft to help the Coast Guard. The hostile vessels they bought park up down at the anchorage at the port at the pier down there.
Pier 2.
Pier 2?
They can't buy a bag.
They can't
Silence.
buy. I mean, they cannot buy a boat to carry 2 trucks to Tobago. They will buy a boat to chase down drug runners. When we were in office, under the member for Siparia, we equipped the protective services with the vessels that today making the record seizure in shallow waters. They wanted the OPVs that move at 2 miles an hour. Who they were chasing down? They wanted OPVs for the high seas when the drug running and the human trafficking. You catch these people close to shore when they come in. We were there, we know. So what are you seizing with? You're not seizing with OPVs? But you have no, well, I can't say shame. You have no moral authority to speak on the Coast Guard. When you had the hostile vessels, you wanted OPVs, and we bought the vessels that is in use now and doing the work for Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Deputy Speaker, they came in with a 10-point plan. And I just want to remind this country of this 10-point plan. I'm not going to display anything, so fear not. Appoint a commissioner of police. When the member for Siparia and others told you you are doing it the wrong way, it is illegal, the court will strike it down. They said, no, we know law. People who themselves never went to court, we know law. When we went to the courthouse with the matter, the court had to adjust and strike down the order. Now they blame us for that. But do you want us to support what you do unlawful? Do you want us to support your illegal act? So there's no commissioner of police now. Let's start with that. Manpower audit. What about that manpower audit? The chairman of the manpower audit committee told the country a few days ago, he said, no, there's a complex task. So you didn't know it was a complex task before. There's a complex task that will take time. We don't know when that's happening. Police complaint, municipal police. Now this is the interesting one. Municipal police. I am told that they do not have 1 cent in the estimates to pay municipal police. The increased manpower that is required. They don't have the money. You know, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to remind this country, when our partnership government brought the soldier bill, the famous soldier bill, to put soldiers on the street to help the police, they rejected that. They did not support it. The member for St. Augustine reminded me, Prime Minister Theresa May, member for Point Fortin, so we don't need that. I'll let you know that somebody who I am sure is lesser qualified than you, Prime Minister Theresa May, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, has just implemented Operation Tempera to put 5,000 soldiers on the street to assist the police. And that was their plan for several years. In fact, it was only made public because of the circumstances there. And I'll come to those circumstances. Municipal police, that will not happen. There's no money for that. There's no allocation for that. They dismantled the community patrol that we put in place that brought comfort, protected neighborhoods in the country. The thinking, Mr. Speaker, Deputy Speaker, was that the community patrols will go into certain areas and they will help the police by easing the burden on the police to patrol and respond to a lot of minor problems in areas. Do you know people in Diego Martin in these constituencies that they temporarily represent? Do you know? Mr. Speaker, in 2010, 2 Maxi again and Diego Martin Northeast was history. Mr. Deputy Speaker, do you know, Mr. Deputy Speaker, he's cackling while I'm speaking. Mr. Deputy Speaker, do you know that in Diego Martin, there's a petition signed by his constituents calling for the reintroduction of the community comfort patrol? Elderly ladies are saying that when they come out, they will actually call the private security. Yeah.
Please, you will have your turn to join the debate. Kindly. Proceed, Oropouche.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, residents in his area are saying that when they call the police, they know them, the private security, by first name basis, by their private telephone, and they will call for assistance, and the police don't have to bother with that. That's what we did. We built not 1, we built not 2, We built not 3. We built 9 police stations in the 5 years we were there. Mr. Deputy Speaker, they went cutting ribbon for all these police stations that we built. Shameless. All we had to do when we leave power was to give you about 5 yards a ribbon. That's all we had to do. And a scissors. They had to cut the ribbon for the police stations that we built. Police stations in their own constituencies. I remember going to Maloney, massive structure there. St. Joseph, the member for St. Joseph, Labre. We built the police stations to give the police officers, modern state-of-the-art office and equipment and technology. We spent the money on boots on the ground. Uniform, cars, GPS system for the cars. I think now police have the GPS system in their cars. Patrolling. When you were going down the highway when we were in office, every time you blink, you see a next police car. Not again. Don't blink. Today, because they were spending millions on SWAT when police couldn't pay their telephone bill, when they didn't have cars, when they didn't have uniform, when they didn't have equipment. We changed that. We changed that. And that is why serious crime went down by 50%. By 50%. Mr. Speaker, Deputy Speaker, they talk about strengthening the police complaints authority. What happened to that? Where that gone? What happened? Nothing. We have no legislation, no policy, nothing about that. Then they talk about parliament oversight. This is part of their 10-point plan. I lower my paper. Parliament oversight. Oversight. Establish a standing joint select committee, crime suppression, etc. The Prime Minister, the member for Diego Martin West, when he met the opposition, made a commitment that that committee, he felt at that time it was good sense that it would be chaired by someone who is not a member of the government. Today, the member for Lavantil West continued to chair that committee. Himself to himself. Mr. Deputy Speaker, witness tampering offense. They made a big song and cry about witness tampering offense. What have you done in 20 months about witness tampering offense? You tamper with anybody? You have any witness before the courts? Nothing has happened on this. Unlawful eviction offense. That happened because I remember when we were in office, there was something about people ambushing and going into people's homes. It's a big word that's used in America for this home invasion and so on. Yeah. So home invasion and unlawful eviction offense. To this day, nothing has happened with that. Now, when you're in government, surely a government is not a place to lime. It is a place for hard work. Dedicated work. They were liming when they're in opposition, did not have a plan, as Naparima tells us. Did not have a plan. They come into government. They have no plan. They're roaming, as Faizabad says. Mr. Deputy Speaker, when you are in opposition, you must have your draft bills. This is why we are now preparing draft bills on several areas. So as soon as we get back in government, within 1 month we're in parliament with legislation. You must have your draft bills. You spoke so much on lawful eviction offense. Anybody bring a bill, a policy, anything like that? Nothing. It coming. Everything coming. The suite is coming. The menu, the architecture. And while that is happening, people are dying. Urban renewal plan. Now, this is a part of a crime strategy, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So, that was there. Urban renewal plan is part of their crime strategy that is number 8, incidentally. Number 8. What urban renewal strategy have you implemented? What have you done apart from fire people, close down operations in community? In several of the companies you are closing down, firing people, putting them on the breadline and running the risk of greater crime and criminal activity. When we were in office, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I remember as Minister of Housing, went to the cabinet, the Prime Minister, we approved further installments of the Color Me Orange program. Yes. We did that. It was something started by the Manning administration. We had no difficulty continuing that. We met and engaged with communities, so when we do work in different centers, the communities are engaged. So you reduce crime. They have a different approach. It's an approach based on arrogance. We in charge now. So they do not meet and treat with communities. They don't engage with the communities. They close down all the programs that can bring some help, redistribute income to low-wage and low-skill sector, and that is how you also deal with crime. Absolutely nothing. Urban renewal. We outfitted, I haven't heard that the member for San Fernando East never talk about. We outfitted the government campus, which is one of the biggest urban renewal projects in Trinidad. Because of the employment it will create. Because of the anti-crime strategy of linking employment to anti-crime, to crime prevention. The government campus, they haven't spoken about that. $1 billion, not one element, not one iota of corruption. That's not EFCL Arima. The outfitting, the construction was Sunway and Calder Heart. That was pre-2010. But the outfitting of that at $1 billion, spotless. And you got more ribbon for that as well. Anti-gang legislation, what have you done with that? What did you bring? Any legislation or policy to strengthen anti-gang? Quarreling about the former administration, lock up how much people, and the people are out and we couldn't keep them and blah, blah, blah. What have you done in 20 months anti-gang legislation? Nothing. Point 10, I don't know how this became part of their plan, but it is here. Caribbean Court of Justice. Acceptance of the Caribbean Court of Justice as our final court of appeal. That was part of their plan. Now, I don't know who they were doing this with, because you surely can't do that alone. So I don't know who you're going to do this with, and how you are going to do this, because you cannot do this without the support of the entire parliament and consensus. What?
You have an additional 15. You care to use them?
Sir, yes.
Proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So I am now saying to the country that this 10-point plan, like the government, has collapsed. There is no 10-point plan in effect.
I like that word 10-point plan.
And what therefore, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I didn't read about the pillars here and so on. I read the 10-point plan, which they went to the country with. Not the pillars, the 10-point plan. And I am not sure even if 1 point of 10 has been implemented. I'm not sure you got 10% in your overall marking. And Minister, from point Fortin, you reminded me of a colleague in university. Anytime he would fail an exam, he would tell us how hard he studied. Anytime he would fail, he would tell you how hard he worked. But he was failing. So I think he should have worked less. Because clearly you are not going to do it. Mr. Deputy Speaker, crying shame upon the former administration, crying shame, OPVs and so on, to remind the gentleman from Point Fortin that today, the MP, Member of Parliament, you have no moral authority to speak on crime. That's the first point. You have no moral authority to speak on corruption, which is related to crime. Corruption, white-collar crime, is an integral part of fighting crime. As I say, no country can deal with crime unless you deal with white-collar crime. And if you continue to fire public officers and contract workers because you believe they are whistleblowers, you are wrong. In the area of terrorism, those of us on this side rose. As soon as I think we left office, we rose and warned this government, it was in the newspaper, that we have had persons leaving and going to foreign lands to be radicalized. And it posed the single most critical element of a threat to this country. I want to remind this government and the member for Point Fortin, this is a beautiful paradise twin island where there were 2 attempts to remove the state, to overthrow a government. And if you do not get your act together and deal seriously with these matters, there may be another attempt to overthrow the state. We warned you about that. When I raised the number of 200, their argument was it's not 200, it's 45. And when I say 400, this is not 400, it's 350. This issue is not arithmetic. It is not arithmetic, it is what you are doing as policy, as law, as program. The Attorney General complains now every week that nobody is listening to him. Why? Why? He said he gave an interview to Al Jazeera for 2 hours and they didn't print 1 word. I wonder why. Maybe you should have translated your statement. But Mr. Terrorism is the biggest single threat. I thought today the Minister of National Security would rise and tell us, because of this threat that our country faces with radicalized persons, we now have the following 10 policy projects in place, 10 policies to be actioned to deal with terrorism. 1, we are going to review immigration policy and immigration law to deal with the radical persons. 2, we are going to set up another unit. The United Kingdom and others, they have the COBRA. Others have units set up. And as part of the architecture of the Ministry of National Security, the time has come to establish a permanent, well-staffed, well-equipped anti-terrorism unit that is operational and not strategic and not policy-oriented, but operational. And you have to use now the intelligence community to deal with this threat. When we left office, we could have told you that the intelligence community was helping and working with the police on major cases of capturing serious criminal elements. Even when one escaped, it was the intelligence community that led the police to recapture the person. What did they do? They took an officer who was sending backhoe and truck to clean drain and so on and put him in charge of the intelligence agency. That's what they did. They removed all the people, and they are now returning with the same SWAT people of 2008 and putting them in the SSA and other agencies. As if they failed before, they will succeed now. And I warn this country, this government says they have no money. I have argued they have plenty dollars. They have plenty dollars. Their problem is they have no sense. They have the dollars. How did you get $18 million for lobbyists? How do you rack up all these charges in hotel room and so on? How do you spend money on soca on the seas? What else? How do you spend money? 90 million out on the Brian Lara Cricket Academy for the FET match. And you are saying you don't have money. You don't have money. But you have to get the resources to put in fighting crime in a strategic way. And an anti-terrorist operational unit is now critical. That is multi-agency. Because you can, I want to say to the Minister from Fortin, do not believe that what happened at the Manchester Arena can only happen in Manchester and cannot happen. And they say we call it the country. Now we blame me. Now we blame me. Do not believe that what happened at the Manchester Arena, when the right-thinking people of Manchester were planning for the Europa final. Look at what happened at the arena. Do not believe that something like that. You see, they are living with their head in the sands. And the rest of their anatomy outside. That is where they are living. So they said, don't even say Manchester. But it happened. It's a fact. The reality is something like that can happen here. Can happen. And you must be proactive in dealing with it. You have to be proactive. So, Minister, I thought you would have told us about the new unit you established or caused to be established to monitor returning nationals and so on. I thought you would have... No, but all of that is secret as well. In fact, they keep their intelligence a secret. Because today, and it's related to crime, there are many victims of crime. When we ask, who did you pay? They say, we can't tell you that secret. Using taxpayers' money to pay persons and cannot account to Parliament who got taxpayers' money as a victim of crime and who did not get. When I said to name the persons, I don't necessarily mean how much money they got. Who are these victims of crime who have been compensated as opposed to who are not receiving compensation? You cannot secretly 5 out of 200. You cannot secretly take taxpayers' money and pack it into certain victims and claim they are victims. How we know that? So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, when we continue on this matter, I want to remind my colleague, because he spoke at length and so on about what the former administration did. They are fixated on that, as if the country really care about that today. People care about their safety. They care that when they go to the mall, nobody will hijack them and rob them. They care that if they go out with their children to get ice cream, they will not be the victim of crime. They care that when they're coming home in the night, they will not be ambushed. Huh? Yes. Members of Parliament care that when we come out of office, they will not rob us. They will not beat up our car and destroy our car. I care about that. I'm not going to say who it happened to, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we care about that. The country right now is not in a mood for you to tell them about the UNC and what the UNC did and didn't do.
They betrayed the population.
They care about what did you do in 20 months addressing crime and what have been the results and what you plan to do to make this a safer place. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, we left them with a National Security Training Academy, a National Security Specialized Operation Unit, a Rapid Response Unit. You all remember that? Yes. The cars, I think, had a tinge of yellow, and they made a big fuss out of that, and then discovered that all part of the world police cars have a tinge of yellow. The Rapid Response Unit, the Counter-Human Trafficking Unit, the establishment of a Transnational Organized Crime Unit, the launch of the E999. In fact, it fails for me now to sound like a Minister of National Security. We had a heavy increase in visible law enforcement presence. We had the interagency joint patrols. When last did anybody see joint patrols? Anybody see that recently?
I see it on the TV.
The joint patrols where? You don't see that anymore. And the Prime Minister herself, I remember, would go out to meet the men and women on duty to give that the sense of support and commitment. We have an absentee Prime Minister from Parliament, from government, from everywhere. He has been on vacation, I believe, for 10 times, on business for 25 times. And now trying to tell us we save money because you don't travel first class on a flight that don't have a first class service. As if everybody born yesterday. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we had the establishment of the National Security Alert State. It had no first class, and American Airlines, they saving money. And Copa Airlines have business. They have no first class. No, and as if that will do something for the $92,000 squandered in Tobago, the $59,000 squandered. The launch of the Community Control Comfort Police, we spoke about that. We dealt with the cell phones when driving, established the surveillance bays, which they have never used, increased the number of CCTV cameras by 500, launched a CCTV center in Tobago. And you know, we gave significant support to crime fighting in Tobago. Significant. Over 180 cameras were installed on the island when we were there. Established a Private Security Network Commission, the training of crime scene investigators, police cars, as I told you before, equipped with GPS technology. You want me to continue? Yeah. I continue. You like that? You like that? Continue, Naparima. Vehicle expansion. More than 500 vehicles were purchased for the police service. 11,470 vehicles were refurbished. I remember the Commissioner of Police came to some meeting, I won't say when and where, and complained about this police car and they don't have the resources. We worked with the Ministry of Finance and the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service every single day for 14 days to ensure they got the money to get the cars. That is dealing with crime. Government is not for limers. It is not for jokers. It is not to sit down in one woodwork place and have a beverage with friends and family. That is not for government. Government is a place to work. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the acquisition of 4 coastal patrol vessels and 2 utility vessels. These are the same utility vessels that are doing all the seizure all around the place now. The largest number of Coast Guard vessels ever approved in the history of the Defense Force was by the People's Partnership. We collaborated with international agencies and so on. When we bought the vessel, I now remember, when we bought the Damen vessel, the opposition leader then, Diego Martin West, he said, you buying a vessel that a wave could throw down. Today it had a record seizure in the waters of Trinidad and Tobago. We approved and initiated purchase of 5 full-body scanners We dealt with the launch of a new security fleet for the Chaguaramas Development Authority, construction of video conferencing at court facilities, improvements in other areas, infrastructural work, police station. I just want to put on record because they say we did nothing. Arima Police Station, Piako, Maloney, Komoto, Brasso, Labre, Oropouche, Maruga. Golden Grove Prison, construction of a perimeter fence and infrastructural works took place. Legislative measures. That is how you bring crime down, not by gallerying, not by buffing up the crook, not by boring the criminals to death and hope they surrender because of a boring speech. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we passed the Interception of Communications Act, the Firearm Amendment Act of 2011, the Financial Intelligence Unit Amendment Act, Financial Intelligence Unit, other pieces of legislation there, the bail amendments, the anti-gang, miscellaneous provisions for kidnapping, data protection. I mean, I'm tired now of reading the legislation that we pass. I mean, there are some, I can't pronounce the words there. The Administration of Justice, Electronic Monitoring and so on, the Securities Act, the Anti-Doping in Sport, the Dog Control Bill. No, but that is when we had an Attorney General, you see, Mr. Deputy Speaker. That is when we had a real Attorney General. Indictable offenses, bail amendment. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we had social and education programs pioneered by the member for Chaguanas East. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to summarize and tell this government that they can continue to do what they were doing in 2009. They can continue to blame the opposition, to blame the UNC, to blame Siparia, to blame Oropouche, to blame every member here. That will not help them. That will not help this country. Unless you can demonstrate what you are doing and you can show results. Instead of architecture, menu, and pillars, you should give us results. Thank you.
Members, it is now 4:25, 16 seconds, and I think that we should have the break for tea now, and we'll resume promptly at 5 p.m. Right?